here for Tazria, She Conceiving Seed. Very interesting Torah reading and feeding. Usually it's doubled up with Mitzvah, which concerns one of the secondary themes right here concerning what's often called that leprosy, but more correctly, it's not leprosy as kind of commonly defined by modern science in that leprosy sense, but more correctly defined as skin disease. Skin disease, very, very interesting. But here we've had the Torah reading from Leviticus, also the prophets reading, as well as the Brit Hadash. And the Brit Hadash also brings in that key theme of the priest, the diagnosis of the priest, and the priest going to the afflicted to see and inspect, and to give a gnosis or a diagnosis and the prognosis. So therefore, the gnosis, the knowledge, you shall know the truth. So let's unpack this 27th sabbatical study, Tazria. But first, here for the first day, Melkam Ehud. Look a bit of them harics there, the Yom Rishon Tov, first day, the first of the 7 days of what we know as the Shavua. Shavua, some might enunciate it as Shavua, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov. Beautifully good 7, the 7 to come, after fulfilling the Shabbat day.
Glory to the Most High Jah, Rastafari, King of Kings, Lords of Lords, conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah, elect God, light of the world, is His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie. Protect my son David as he travel this lonely path. Steer my son far from bloody men who surround him with opinions sharp as daggers. Bless him with a vision to distinguish friends from foes. Bless his listeners with overstanding and patience. Remind the critics that all judgment belongs to thee. May the words of thy mouth and the meditation of thy heart be acceptable in thy presence.
It is good that you are here to record this picture of me in my palace garden at Addis Ababa. People who see this throughout the world will realize that even in the 20th century, with faith, courage, and a just cause, David will still beat Goliath.
Amen. So here at Prince Far I with the first day psalm appointed for the eve of the first day, Psalm 24.
The earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, with the earth that dwells therein. For he hath founded it upon the sea, and established it upon the flood. Who shall ascend unto the hills of the Lord, or who shall stand in his holy place? He that hath clean hands and a pure in heart, who are not lifted up his souls unto vanity, nor sore deceitfully. He shall receive the blessing from the Lord, and the righteousness from the God of his salvation. This is a generation of them that seek thy face, O Jacob, Selah. Lift up your heads, ye gates, and let the kings of glory come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord mighty, mighty in battle. Lift up thy gates, and let the King of glory come in. The earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof. We hear that dwell therein. For he has found it up on the sea and established it up on the flood. Who shall ascend unto the hills of the Lord? Or who shall stand in his holy place? He that have clean and a pure in heart, who are not lifted up his souls unto vanity, nor so deceitfully. He shall receive a blessing from his Lord, and righteousness from the God of his salvation. Yeah. Who have eyes to see, let them see. Fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither envious against the workers of iniquity. The earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, yeah. For he that found it up on the sea and established it up on the flood. Who shall ascend unto the hills of the Lord, or who shall stand in his holy place? He that have clean hands and a pure in heart, who are not lifted up his souls unto vanity, nor so deceitful. He shall receive a blessing from the Lord. Lift up your heads, O ye gates. Lift up thy everlasting door, and let the King of glory come in. Daniel saw the stone was a rolling in a Babylon. A black stone was rolling in a Babylon. Daniel saw the stone, yeah. Daniel saw the stone was a rolling in a Babylon. Daniel saw the stone, black stone, yeah. The earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, with ear that dwell therein. For he has found it up on the sea and established it up on the flood. For who shall ascend unto the
Yes, Prince Farai with the first day Psalm 24. Standing psalm right there. Here's Queen Makeda of clean hands, Niki Kapai Mubal Labab, and a purified heart here. Bringing out today's, the first day Psalm 24, Queen Makeda, clean hands.
Pure heart, hey, you have clean hands. mountain. Who can stand in this holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart. Forever. Who can stand to this holy mountain? Who can stand in this holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart.
Clean hands, pure hearts. That's Queen Marketer right there. There's here, oldie but goodie here. Everall Cooper, help out this nation. Help out this nation. Gonna ride up with this reasoning.
Sometimes I sit down and I wonder.
Stay tuned for today's lesson on the true good news of His Imperial Majesty's Christ, the Messiah, Yahushua, as proclaimed and taught by our brother, Wyndham Yadon, a.k.a. Ras Iadonis Tafari, of the Lion of Judah Society.
Because Gentile, Western, Gentile, counterfeit Christian mind, a lot of these things are extremely confused. So here in our studies, let's go through a couple of basics. First of all, let's get an overview here. So here we pick up here, podcast, the Rastafari podcast here on this. I'd like to emphasize this is Sunday, or Ehud is the first day. Usually the first Aliyah we'll get into on the first day. Here for the second day, the second Aliyah. But first of all, the overview. The synopsis right here for this 27th sabbatical study for this Shabbat Strong, for these 7 days right here, Monday podcast here, the second day. We have this Torah reading and feeding here, Tazriya. Now, Zara, like seed, and Zer, you have Zer, Tazriya, if she conceives seed, right? Or when she conceives seed. So we call this the law of the mothership, or one might say motherhood, but you know, it's the good ship, mothership, yes? So our Torah reading and feeding here, God's direction, instructions here in this Shabua, it continues the discussion, the reasoning on what is known as the Torot. Torot is the plural of Torah. Now, Torah, many people would say, well, that basically is law. That's in the Western Gentile translation, and in a general sense, sort of. But actually the word Torah, means direction, instruction, coming from the Hebrew yara, yara. Yara means like point the finger. Yara is like to aim, to point the finger. So this is why the more better translation into the English of Torah is direction, instructions. So overall, we have the 5 books of Moshe, we have the Torah, the direction. But then in the direction, we have directions, instructions on different particular matters for Jah people. So here we continuing in the reasoning of the Torah, the directions, instructions concerning purity and impurity. That actually began with the 26th, the previous sabbatical study that was called Tzav or Tzau. Tzau, command, modern Hebrew, they'll say Tzav. Tzav, ancient pointing, Tzau, Afro-Shemitic pointing. So here, in this 27th, here it speaks concerning a new mother, a new potential matriarch, right? Is regarded, right, as Nida. Now, to explain as best as we can some of these basics right here, because some might read the part where it talk about a woman and her infirmity based on the translation, so forth and so on, say, oh, look, woo, it's sexist against a woman. That's the Western Gentile counterfeit Christian mind. But as you actually study the Hebrew, you recognize it's speaking about whether man or woman, but it begins off right here with the mother, the significance of the mother, the matrix, that door that most of I and I in the true way would enter into a mother. So the mother, the new mother in that state, is regarded as Nida. Nida in the Hebrew concerns a menstruant woman, a woman in blood or bleeding, right? Now this is considered tameh. The Hebrew word is tameh. Sounds a little like another word in English, contaminated, tameh, and tameh means impure. Now, this is impure. The impure here is strictly regarding the sanctuary. Let's check this right here, regarding the holy place. It begins off, of course, with the mother, but then it continues here, usually these 2 Torah portions, Mitzorah, and Tazria, usually in usual years are connected, right? They're like a double portion. But since this is a lunar leap year right here, we read it and study it separately. So here we're studying Tazria separately from the usual connective double portion, Mitzorah. Now, Mitzorah often is translated as a leper, but actually it's more better one skin diseased. And Hebraically, a Mitzorah or a leper or one skin disease, the idea in the Hebrew is the Motzi Ra'ah. Motzi, 2 words coming together, right? Hebrew etymology and point of reference from ancient days. If you understand the Hebrew, it's like English, like in different, ways we say certain things, and it can have like 2 kind of meanings if you say it like this. So Mitzorah is leper, right, or one skin disease, and a Motzi is one who brings something, one who brings, and Ra'ah, right? Ra is often translated as evil, but the word evil in the Hebrew has a sense of something that's evil, something that is hurtful, something that's unkind. Something that's evil, hurtful, unkind. So there's kind of different context, depends on how it is, the context of what we're reading. So here, the Motzi Ra'ah, in the sense of the Mitzorah, is one who brings forth evil, because it's an ancient thought, and I think there's something to this, and we should think and reason on it, that words, sound, and power, right? Everything is created through word. So one who brings forth like evil, hurtful, unkind, bad mind and bad speech, that there's a consequence to that. So in the ancients, one of the consequences to that was connected Hebraically with skin disease. It's like our skin is our covering. So that word, sound, and power, right, has a reflective on our covering. You know what I mean? So I'm just bringing that out so one can understand the context of this, and hopefully other matters will become clear. So a new mother is regarded as Nida, or a menstruant woman, and is considered tameh, right, impure regarding the sanctuary. Now, it's not just for a woman, so all these wannabe sexist, femalist, or feminists need to step back and understand and study this, because if you read on in this chapter and even the next chapter, it speaks about men. It speaks about whether a man or a woman. But of course, to whom more is given, more is required. So therefore, if we look at the laws of impurity, there are more laws that require and pertain to men. If a man is bleeding, if a man just had sexual intercourse, right, or he's, like some liquid is flowing as it should not flow. Even a runny nose is very questionable. Now, why I say this here is because we're looking at the book of Leviticus, and Leviticus is the handbook of the priests. So we have to recognize, well, who, what, where, why, when, who is being spoken to right here, right? Because remember that now with Leviticus, it is only the sons of Aaron and Aaron that perform the priestly rites. Before Leviticus and the Egel Masekha, before the molten calf, falsely called the golden calf, all of the firstborn sons of Israel, as among other people, could offer sacrifices for their family. As we have Abraham, we have Yitzhak and Yaakov. There was not a particular place. There was not a particular, one can almost pray or worship anywhere. But now, with John now birthing out this nation, Yisrael, and due to the uckery, the apostasy, the breaking of the covenant with the molten calf, when the Israelites, in waiting for Moshe, went back to their, Jah took the children of Israel out of Kemen, out of Egypt, but couldn't take the Kemen or Egypt out of them. It's just like analogy of this is like we're here in this Western Gentile world and we're looking forward to going to our own land. But then as we're traveling through the wilderness, some might revert to the old practices that they was used to. This is what happened with the children of Israel. But the bad thing is this: they had already come into a covenant, especially the sons of Israel, the B'nai Yisrael, children of Israel. Translation usually is specifying the sons of Israel. Why? Because to whom more is given, more is required. That's why John says he will visit the iniquity, right, of the fathers upon the children, specifically in the Hebrew upon the sons. So the real reading would be he would visit the iniquity of the fathers, the patriarch, right, upon the sons, to the third and the fourth generation, those who hate him. So in other words, if we continue in the bad ways of our patriarchs, this is to remind them, then we bring not only on I and I selves and I and I children, but also on I and I family consequences. I emphasize that because some would like to get into this nowadays unisex thing, and they'll say, well, when it says right here the fathers, it's saying fathers and mothers. No, it's specifically saying fathers for a reason. Like it specifically says here in this 27th sabbatical study, a new mother. It begins off with the mother, right? And it's saying that regarding the sanctuary, in other words, during this period of time, she could not enter into the sanctuary because she was Tameh. In the same way, if a man had an issue, you got an issue you need tissue for, you could not enter into the sanctuary. If you're a priest or you're serving, you have to first, be clean before you can serve Chabarim. You know what I'm saying? So this is the context of the clean and the unclean. All right, the clean, and if she's at home and, there's something she needs to do if a person is sick, but they need to get better. But during that time, they could not enter into the sanctuary. So the whole clean and the unclean with regard to one having an issue. An issue, a woman during menstruation is bleeding. If a man has a bleeding, in the same way a woman has a bleeding, a man can have those. And when we look through the Torah instruction, it goes into verse by verse by verse. But this one area here does focus on the mother, because the mother is very, very important. You know what I mean? You should know what I mean. The mother, the door into this world, right? So regarding the sanctuary, just to emphasize the impurity, these words that I use, clean and unclean, there's a context to it. So regarding the sanctuary, that new mother could not enter into the sanctuary for at least 40 days if she had a boy child or a male child, or 80 days if she had a girl child. Now, the people who think and have been made to be naive that, oh, the Bible was sexist. They don't even understand that these things have been put to the test here, and it's found out. Even I went through a kind of a, not a completely scientific, but I did go get the knowledge, the scientia, from certain mothers, you know, who have had boy children, male children, and female children. And interestingly enough, I found out that some of the science that I had read about is true, that it takes more out of a woman, those mothers who've had children, when they had a girl child, this whole like and like thing. She's female and she has a female child. It took her longer time to recover. A few mothers had testified. And this, after I'd done some study on this, you know, said, is this just arbitrary, just saying more for a woman because a woman is a woman? And then it was found out that some had put this to the test and found out that amazingly, it does take more on average for a woman to recover from having a girl child than a male child. Just something about the nature of things. So looking at this in the Torah is very interesting, and we'll be glad to share some of the research, and no doubt others have done their investigations on this. So it was not just arbitrary. It might seem like, you know, less was given to the male but more to the female because, see, that's sexist. But then based on scientific research, it has been proven that it takes more time for a woman can recover, like her strength, you know, after childbirth and that whole period of giving birth, can recover more or less to herself sooner after a male child. It's almost like the male child being male, you know, and expressing as male was all contained. But the girl child is like and like, you know, she's female, like mother, like daughter, in a sense. So it takes more out of the woman, right? Let's go on. On the 8th day of life, a boy must be circumcised. So according to the Hebrew and the Levitical prescription here, but based on the Torah, the boy child, the male child, must be circumcised after the mother's period of, we call this more better, ritual impurity. Just in the same sense that if a man has an issue, you know, if a man just had intercourse, and now he wants to go a couple of minutes, hours, whatever. No, he cannot, because he is unclean. So he cannot enter in the same way, right, into the holy court. So on the 8th day of a boy's life, a male child's life, he must be circumcised. We also need to discuss ancient circumcision from the butchering that is done nowadays. There is a big difference, but we'll get into that. Let's make a note of that as well. Right? Is all circumcision the same circumcision? Is circumcision nowadays like real biblical circumcision? Was skin cut off, or was a cord cut? Just as you graft plants, if you know about grafting. But anyway, after the mother's period of ritual, you say impurity, had ended, she was required to bring a yearling sheep as an olah, as a burnt offering, a holocaust, a consumption offering, and a dove for a chatat, right, for a sin and ukri offering. Now, if she is poor, 2 doves suffice for both offerings. So therefore, if one was able to afford and had sheep and had cattle, well, she would bring a sheep, right, and a dove. But if she was poor, it was only required to bring 2 doves suffice for the offerings. Now, this is interesting too. This means that one had to give from what they had, and if they did not have, therefore for those who had less, a lesser proper but lesser offering could be accepted. This is an interesting reasoning as well. Another reasoning within the reasoning is that, well, since people say that, well, you know, having a child is a gift and all that, you know, like it is a gift, but, you know, people have their ways they look at it. Well, why was there a sin offering, a burnt offering and a sin offering? Question mark. But the portion here, next it describes certain afflictions, most dangerous diseases, right, collectively called Sara'at, right, collectively called. Now, some would bring this out as leprosy. So in the KJV and other Bibles, this is leprosy, but a little better, we'll get into that just now. So the Sara'at, it caused the affected person or the affected thing to be both ritually tameh, or ritually impure, and in a state of uncleanness, and the word here is tuma, tuma, right? Note that Sara'at is not to be identified, or should not, as we really study it, with what is called today leprosy, as some English translations. So there's many English translations that would call it leprosy. But yet, if you do any study on, well, what is Hansen's disease today, they call it Hansen's disease today, and what is the description of Sara'at, or the Mitzorah, scripturally? It's not quite the same. But since the symptoms of Sara'at included not just the afflicted person's skin, but sometimes his or her, but his clothes, his pottery, the pottery vessels, as well as his house. So whatever this was that is better described as skin disease, not only affected the person's skin, but also could affect, it's like almost like contagious. It's like they had CDC. This was like the ancient kind of CDC prescriptions, right? Sometimes his clothes, his property vessels, as well as his residence or the house. So they could be sara'at, this type of, quote, leprosy, end quote, in a house. Do we see this today? So is it the same thing? We say not, and we just want to make a point to ones and ones that put a strong question mark around leprosy and just do a little research. What is the disease being identified here in the Torah? And then look up leprosy today and what they call leprosy today. It's not quite. In a sense, the leprosy here had an element of vitiligo, what was called vitiligo. And vitiligo, scientifically speaking, is a nuance. Yes, it can be considered a dis-ease in that sense. It's a dis-ease. However, it's not quite the same thing, right, as Hansen's, what's known as Hansen's disease, and commonly is called leprosy. Now, when applied to people, Sara'at was a sort of spiritual affliction, or what is referred to as tzuris, that could only be diagnosed by a Kohen, a priest, not a doctor. Now, this is an aspect that doesn't come out so well amongst many people's interpretations of it, but if they study, they will find that when we apply this terminology of the leper, or what's called the skin disease, the mitzorah, and sara'at, it was a sort of a spiritual, the way it's diagnosed here in Torah is not just looking at the physical aspects, but also at the metaphysical or the spiritual aspects, which could be only diagnosed by one, such as a Kohen or priest, and not by a doctor. Just so I want to just hold that in mind, because there were ones who were, quote, doctors to treat diseases, right? But this right here is more of a spiritual. There's a spiritual, or unseen aspect. And this is interesting with the connection of the mitzorah, the skin disease, or in the KJV called the leper, and the Hebraic idea of the motzi ra, the one who brings forth ra, like ra, right? You know, bad word sound, you know, like evil, like speak evil or slander. Now, as we go into what the scripture says here, it says, if there's white or pink patches that appeared on a person's skin, if white or pink patches, and this is one of the areas in scripture that more than 2 decades ago, this was a kind of one of the easy areas to go to say, well, if the children of Israel were white folks, then it wouldn't be so much like a white patch or whatever on their skin. So just to point that out there, because remember what happened with Moshe. Moshe was said to Jehovah that, well, the people are not going to believe me. He felt that the people were not going to, admit as truth if he told them that the Elohim of the Hebrews, not other people's Elohim, the no God, the pseudo-trinities, but the true triunity appeared to me, that people won't believe me. And therefore Moshe was instructed in 2 signs. One was the sign of the rod, the casting it down and it turning into tanim, or nachash, because both words are used, turning into some sort of a beast or a, quote, serpent, right? And the second sign was where he put his hand in his bosom, right? And he took it out and it turned, according to the translator, white as snow, and then he put it in and it turned to his other flesh. So this kind of builds on that right there from Exodus, right? So if white or pink patches appeared on a person's skin, the afflicted person was required to contact a Kohen. Kohen in Hebrew, word for priest, for an examination. If the Kohen, the Hebrew priest, detected one, so here's what the Kohen or the priest was to detect. So the Kohen and the priest, if he detected 2 hairs that had turned white within the spot, or secondarily, a piece of healthy skin in the middle of the spot. In other words, a healthy piece of skin in the middle of the afflicted spot of skin, he was declared tameh, or like contaminated or unclean, tameh, and then had to follow the prescribed Torot, direction, instructions for ha-mitzorah, for the leper in the translation KJV, or for the skin disease. Person afflicted with sara'at, with skin, some sort of a skin disease. Otherwise, if he didn't detect that, this person was declared tahor, or clean. On the other hand, if the Kohen, the Kahin, the priest, suspected sara'at, but was unsure, was not really sure, but was unsure, but he suspected, the afflicted person was quarantined. And this is interesting with the past 2 years and the COVID. You know what I mean? Because people might read this and say, oh, why they doing that? They quarantining people like in the Bible, the scripture. But one thing happens when there's some disease or something's affecting people and other people can catch it. People that don't seem to have a problem with, accepting quarantine, like even nowadays. It's interesting that we have this right here thousands of years ago for a health-related crisis. So over the past 2 years, it's interesting, people were even self-quarantining themselves. So health is very, very important, and to see right here in the heart of the Torah, we have a health situation, right? But if the priest suspected that there was disease, sara'at, but was unsure, the afflicted person was quarantined and was required to perform teshuvah in the ancient pointing of Hebrew, modern Hebrew, teshuvah, repentance. The word actually means to turn, like a change of mind, or if one is going the wrong way, do like a 180. This is the sense of the Hebrew term teshuvah, because shu means to turn, teshuvah, to do a turn, make a change, right? So this also emphasizes the spiritual, or the psycho-spiritual. We like to use the term psycho-spiritual because it points to that inner couple. It points to the spirit and the soul, right, within man, or the psychology, the psychology and the inner spirit of man, which we know that, as a man thinketh, one can become. We know that thoughts can affect our health. Sometimes even thoughts can affect, so much so that they manifest in outer things in our body, right? So teshuvah, thinking differently. If a second evaluation indicated that the spots had grown larger in size, the person was declared tameh, or contaminated, or unclean, and was subject to the Torot, direction, instruction for ha-mitzorah, dwelling, quote, as the scripture says, outside the camp, until the person was completely healed. Because what's interesting about what is called leprosy here in Leviticus chapter 12 to 13, actually seems to be contagious and not like what we call so-called leprosy so much today, and the effects also appear to be different. There was leprosy today, it has morphed into things like elephantitis. And that's interesting because that's polarized, most dangerous diseases. And it's interesting we have these reggae tunes, and this is why we connect these tunes here with this Torah reading and feeding to give more substance according to the teaching of His Majesty. Lastly but not leastly, right here, if someone was diagnosed with sara'at, right, sometimes translated as leprosy, but better as skin disease. They were forced to leave the community and sometimes even live in a state of exile. Now, of course, this sounds very, very harsh, but let's not be hypocrites. If there's some dis-ease, sometimes even with your family, you love your family, but if you see them suffering, you're not going to say, oh, I'll catch it with you because now both of y'all are sick and you can't heal the other person. Man can give for his brother a ransom. So right here, he had to tear his clothes. So therefore, when this one was diagnosed, this one had to tear their clothes like a mourner and put a shroud over his face, descending to his upper lip, and remain alone. If anyone came near, Ha-Mitzora, the leper, the skin disease, the afflicted one, was required to cry out, Tameh, Tameh, Tameh. And it was unclean, unclean, like contaminated, stay away. Do not become impure because of me. No one was permitted, right, to come within at least 8 or so feet of that particular person. Once again, as we study what this thing appears to be in the Torah, it appears to have a significant aspect of contagion to it. So let's understand that, right? While so isolated, the person would have the opportunity to perform teshuvah or repentance, and therefore to seek a spiritual rebirth, right, as described in the following Torah reading and feeding. That's usually part of a double portion, and that's mitzora. But here, in this year, in this time, in this season, here we actually have it separated so we can have a little more time to, study, right, and shoot ourselves approved. But here, brothers and sisters, we got like feeding right here for this sabbatical study, for this Shabbat Strong. We just shared a portion of it earlier before the musical interlude. Here, an overview of this 27th, and 7, 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 and 7.
Ribbon, Lord of mercy, Jesus Christ, nice. And I went to a dance, a Clarendon. They on a big fat thing named Palm. But as we reach at the dance gate, the gate for the whole up on me woman hand. One box me give me 9 blasted face. Money scatter out all over the place. Babylon but me with a big 38. Hear me now tell. Let go me hand gate, man let me come in. Let go me hand gate, man let me come in. Me sleep under me cellar when me live on popping. And anything me eat it up me ice gold and green. Me beetroot, me ackee man, me cabbage and me beans land. Let go me hand gate, man let me come in. Let go me hand gate, man let me come in. You love brag and you love show off, Lord. Your mouth long like a shovel mouth sharp. Put me neck on a block and even chop it off. Put it in a wheelbarrow, fling it down a wharf. Me duppy come back and it still a laugh. Let go me hand gate, man let me come in. Let go me hand gate, man let me come in. Let go me hand gate, man let me come in.
Yellow man made it. And you say after me done made it. Me set it. Zungo zungo go zungo zen. Zungo zungo go zungo zen. Say if you have a paper, you must have a pen. And if you have a start, you must have a N. Say 5 plus 5 is equal to 10. And if you have both, you put them in a 10. And if you have a rooster, you must have a N. Now zungo zungo go zungo zen. Zungo zungo go zungo zen. Jumpy happiness and jumpy joy. You know fi call yellow man no boy. Lady and they used to take fit higher. Brave guy lord him call him child. You know fi call yellow man no boy. You know fi call John no boy. You know fi take iron knife boy. Zungo zungo go zungo zen. Watch it. Zungo zungo go zungo zen. Catch it. Zungo zungo go zungo zen. Car 00119. Cause yellow man make you feel so fine. Me chatter me lyric, me chatter me na rhyme. Me na eat like me pull up a rhyme. Cause yellow man him na commit no crime. Cause zungo zungo go zungo zen.
saints of woman. Because all these things are abomination to the Lord God. Yeah. Cause every day the girls dressed up in a trousers. I say what happened to your skirts and blouses? Why can't I man see you in your dresses? Cause these things unto judge and all pleases. And every day them a worship vanities. And your greatest lust is jewelry. Mind ya lick you with diseases. Hey, mind ya lick you with diseases. Hey, the most dangerous diseases. I said the most dangerous diseases. I'm talking like the elephantitis. The other one is the polymyelitis. Arthritis and the one diabetes. You see, cause every day that I turn the Bible pages, from Proverbs forward to Genesis, from Revelation to Ecclesiastes. So let me tell you, say me wisdom increases, and the lust of the world it decreases. While every day man a build explosives, the corruption of the world it exposes. Mind ya lick you with diseases. Hey, mind ya lick you with diseases. I said the most dangerous diseases. I said the most dangerous diseases.
Repeat again, Lord. Repeat again. Hey, the Colonel come and him be your gate man. You come to battalion with a different fashion. Styling, that you know the gate man busy. Styling, that you know the gate man busy. Hungry, Lord make him collect money. Hungry, Lord make him count enough money. Hey, $5, $10, and 20. Hey, save up the copper, forget to pick me. Call Papa Toy and the DJ Daddy. Styling, that you know the gate man busy. Styling, that you know the gate man busy. Run more water than flour. Say that we are more water than flour. The greatest liar that a bazaar wire. Say first time dread them used to call them liar. If the dread poke you hear them shout out fire. Right? But Styly, lad don't know the gate man busy. Styly, lad don't know the gate man busy. Hungry, lad make him collect money. Hungry, lad make him count enough money. Hey, $5, $10, and 20. Hey, save up the cap and we get a picnic. Call Papa Toy and the DJ Daddy. Hey, say Papa Toy in a category. Styly, lad don't know the gate man busy. Styly, lad don't know the gate man busy.
Now this is a State of the Union address to those with a musical interest. From the Minister of Argument and Reasoning, Right Honorable Mr. Shined. O.M. Rough and rugged, we coming rough and rugged. Feel me foundation deep and solid we with. Rough and rugged, me coming rough and rugged. Feel me foundation deep and solid. Long time I'm on a watch and for a very long time I've waited. Meantime and between time, enough the things I have created. In a the lyrics laboratory, that's where I experimented. But before the final product come around, it's gotta be tested. Then and only then will I approve and be contented. Why? Because the public is extremely educated. Well, that is one of the reasons why me get sophisticated. Cause some people are picky while some folks are open-minded. And some of them are also pleased and very complicated. But one way or another, everybody should be respected. Cause rough and rugged, we coming rough and rugged. Feel me foundation deep and solid we with. Rough and rugged, I'm coming rough and rugged. Feel me foundation deep and solid. Now before I say what I have to say, it's thoroughly contemplated. Any mistake that I should make is immediately corrected. Cause in a this business I am totally devoted. Time and energy was invested so that it could be perfected. And by Jah I was anointed, that is why I'm motivated. No man from the land can stop it cause it must be manifested. Carefully selected, very keenly designated. Grammatically perfect, every word is properly stated. You hear it back a million times but still you can't believe it. Just like an electric circuit with the voltage overloaded. Zoom, rough and rugged, we coming rough and rugged. To me foundation deep and solid we with. Rough and rugged, we coming rough and rugged. To me foundation deep and solid. Tick a tock, my golden end, my golden end. Tick a tock, my golden end. Tick a tock, my golden end. She lay next for the gentleman. Sometime 9 and sometime 10. Oh, and whenever she lay, she make an alarm. Cock, me lay out, whoa, lay out, whoa. Searching for morning from a golden end. Got a little girl at my home. She wake up this morning. She didn't eat no breakfast, no. She
wake up this morning, she no eat no breakfast. She leave out my home and she faint in the path. She give my neighborhood a lot of remarks, lots of remarks. She give them lots of remarks, lots of remarks. It was not my fault when she faint in the path. Lord God knows. Hey little girl, don't be like a rolling car. Oh, before the wind you're gonna be like a shaft. If you leave like a rolling car, no, don't leave like a rolling car, no. Tick-a-tock-a-tock, my golden name. She lay next for the gentleman, sometime 9 and sometime 10. Whoa.
Yes, right there, diseases, the diseases rhythm, aka the golden hen rhythm, diseases right there, Makom, kind of a right now tune for this Torah reading and feeding right there, the 27th, that was Volcano, Junjalaw's classic right there, but here we have a song, we're going to pick up more on this Torah reading and feeding, a breakdown in the bill. It's an interesting observation that it sounds like leprosy. That's what they translate it as, but actually it's like more correctly skin disease. But it doesn't fully correspond with any disease, though it has kind of, symptoms of various different diseases, what we know as a skin disease, a sara'at right there, but the spiritual condition of it. And this is why the Kohen, on that level is a hygienic level. But as we mentioned, there were doctors. There were ones who were skilled in basic, we could say, medicine. And it brought to mind just a rhema word that you wouldn't go to, for a broken foot or a tooth or a cut. You would not necessarily go to the priest for that, because there were other, we could say, specialists. Therefore, we have to consider what is this sara'at? What was it then, and is there any trace of it today, even according to the New Covenant sense? There was physical, what they call sara'at, skin disease, but is there a spiritual component? Is there a spiritual level of that? Look a bit more as we pick up. But here, the psalm that we have here for this first day, here for the April 14th day, according to Gregorian first day psalm right here, Psalm 53.
מזמור נ"ג למנצח על מחלת משכיל לדוד.
The fool hath said in his heart,
אמר נבל בליבו,
there is no God.
אין אלוהים.
Corrupt are they, and have done abominable iniquity. There is none that doeth good. God looked down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there were any that did understand, that did seek God. Every one of them is gone back. They are altogether become filthy. There is none that doeth good. No, not one. No, not one.
אין גם אחד.
Have the workers of iniquity no knowledge, who eat up my people as they eat bread? They have not called upon God. There were they in great fear, where no fear was. For God hath scattered the bones of him that encampeth against thee. Thou hast put them to shame, because God hath despised them. Oh, that the salvation of Israel will come out of Zion. When God bringeth back the captivity of his people, Jacob shall rejoice, and Israel shall be glad. Be glad, be glad, be glad, be glad, be glad.
Yes. Psalm 53, which is said to be a later version, adapted from the earlier psalm or the earlier dove, Psalm 14. Here we have Psalm 53 for liturgical use. And there's a couple of interesting points, not to get into it right here. We got more on this Tazria, when it says Ein Elohim, that there is no Elohim. It's not so much atheism in the modern sense, and this is like with Tazria and leprosy, right? That's the way the translators back then that they understood it, they said leprosy. When we look at the signs and the symptoms described in HaTorah, we recognize it's not really, Sara'at is not so much leprosy in the sense of Hansen's disease, but actually it is skin disease, and there's a spiritual component and the connection also with the words of our mouth, the meditation of our hearts, seeing the connection between the word, and the resonance of the word and health and sickness. But here, I'd like to pick up with a little bit more right here for this Tazria, Ki Tazria, when she conceives seed. And also another question is, why do we think that the woman conceiving, right, a male child, a female child, and the both hygienic on one level, yes, the hygienic, but also it says unclean as pertaining the sanctuary. Because one might say, it's boo-hoo-hoo in the woman right there, but if you keep reading, it talks about the sara'at. It's about those conditions where a man is not able, right, to enter into the sanctuary, even where certain priests could not serve as well. So we have to consider that right there. But here's some Q4C questions for the Habarim, spelling for C, Q4K, right? But the Q4C questions right here, a couple of questions and answers for this Tazria 27 sabbatical study for this Shabbat study for this Shabbat. So here in this lunar, we're in a lunar period of a lunar leap year. So because of lunar leap year, this also conditions when even Fasika, even according to the Orthodox Ethiopian churches and those churches that still calculate according to the so-called Jewish or the Hebraic Passover to calculate the time of what they falsely call Easter. But here in the season, here these Tazria or Ki Tazria, Ki when or if Tazria. She conceives the seed. If a woman conceives seed. Now, as we pointed out, when it speaks about unclean, clean, and unclean, especially in these contexts, is pertaining to the holy place, as pertaining to who would have a right to access the holy place. And even though it begins off here, and most ones know what the Bible say, or at least they've heard some things concerning when a woman menstruation or flowers, so forth and so on, they might get and often do get a misinterpretation, misunderstanding, filling up with vain imagination that the Bible here sex is just speaking about the woman. But as we go forward, we will find out that no, to the man and to the woman, in fact, there's more upon the man than. But here is the law, the Torah, the direction, instruction concerning the matriarch, concerning the womb, concerning, we say, the mothership or motherhood. So here, let's go to some basic questions right here, also some of the reasonings right here, some interesting reasonings to bring out in order to understand this whole clean and unclean aspect. So, for example, let's go to question 1 right here. Just a few questions. We still got to ride up with Psalm 141 that we use as a point of reference, right, both to the phi cycle and the metaphysical, the meta-phi cycle overstanding from the what's called the Old Covenant, the Brit HaYashana, to the Brit Chadasha, to the New Covenant. So basic questions here. Here, referring to this from Hebrew for Christians and going to give some tweaks or nuances if we see it better or different. Here, basic questions. Question 1, how long is a woman, or in the scripts, the term for woman, the Isha, a woman, or when used in a certain sense, I say Ishti, like my Isha, my woman. And we have Ish for man and Isha. As we point to Bereshith, Genesis, when Adam, according to Bereshith, according to the fragments of Adam that Moshe and the scribes compiled and compulated into this first book, we have Adam after the woman is built. I say built because it's interesting in Genesis chapter 2, right? Genesis chapter 2. Also, there's a distinction between the Adam, right, of Genesis chapter 1. We'll get into that a little bit more, but picking up with Genesis chapter 2, when the man is formed, or more better, when he was reformed, when man or humanity was reformed, and we get our, quote, Adam type, according to Genesis chapter 2. It says that he was formed from the dust of the ground, KJV translators. In the Hebrew, right, that he was formed, yatzar, he was formed, reformed, or literally squeezed, like you squeeze clay or squeeze something together, from the Afar. The Afar, go look up the Afar. The Afar are some of the oldest peoples, according to the scientists and genetics and, looking into all of those knowledge aspects, from the oldest peoples, right, the Afar and the Afar Triangle. And right around the Afar Triangle is a place called the Gulf of Aden, or Eden, right? And Eden in the Hebrew means delight. So where is the garden? But first, where is Eden? We see that Africa is that Eden, and east of Eden, Far East Africa, and that would include the so-called Middle East. Middle East, since they did the Suez Canal, they cut, Arabia from Africa. But in ancient times, this was one contiguous region, right, for the peoples who are now called black peoples and African peoples and so-called Hamites or Kemetic people and Shemitic people. In fact, the linguistic is Afro-Semitic. Linguistically, it's identified to be Afro-Asiatic, Afro, or Kamo, Hamo, Chemo, Semitic, Semito, Hamitic. So that means these two peoples, right, were not like counterfeit Christianity and the times of the Gentiles like to try to deceive us or falsely teach us like these people were separate. The Hamites were just in the continent of Africa and then go beyond the border, then cross the Red Sea and, then go nowhere else. Otherwise, how do we have Hindus Kush way over there? But anyway, that point right there, Genesis chapter 2. So in Genesis chapter 2, Adam was formed or reformed, or literally he was squeezed, right? But when the woman, when she was, you could say, brought forward from the genetics, or, quote, the rib, right, the side component, right, of the XY, XY, the side component. That's how the Hebrew brings it out. But the translator says rib, right, and the woman was brought forward. The language for the woman is bana. We have bana, which means to build. Also, bana is related to bina, which is overstanding, or one would say like understanding. Right, then also to the word bane, not the word for son, ben, but bane in the sense of to discern between this and that. But she was built. So often we say, well, the man in the formation, as one would say, quote, unquote, strong quotes on this, the creation, because it doesn't say that man was created there. He was formed. There are different processes, right? Creation was already in the beginning, but here at this point, man was formed. He was squeezed together, and the woman was built. When the man called Adam, and it's interesting in the Hebrew, Adam, when he looks upon the woman, he calls her Isha. He doesn't call her by his proverbial mother's name, Adama, which is that reddish-brown ground. He doesn't call her Adama, but he calls her Isha, because she came from Ish. So Ish is a terminology in the Hebrew, from the Hebrew perspective, that's used with the higher man. As you find in the Psalms where it says both low and high, the low is the B'nai Adam, is the sons of, or the children of Adam, and the B'nai Ish is the higher. So it's interesting that Adam, recognizes himself as Ish, and he calls his woman Isha. So thus we get the term Isha for woman, and according to the context, it may be translated as wife, but it's basically the word for woman, or in a sense you could say higher woman, compared with Ish, Isha from the Ish. So even we look at the English, we see she shall be called woman, woman, because she came from man. So we see at the root of woman is man, and you can kind of see that link with the Ish and the Isha. But how long is a Isha? Rendered, quote, Tameh. The Hebrew word is Tameh. Tameh can be translated with strong quotes as impure. More better, linking even the English understanding, contaminated. How long should she be contaminated? Let's note this here for the record, because we live in a world which is confused, Babylon world. This is not only for the woman, but here in this 27 sabbatical study with the law of the matriarch is focusing on the law of the motherhood, mothership. So how long is she tameh? After the birth of a child. So this is, as we said, in regard to the holy place. In other words, when a man is also tameh, he cannot enter into the holy place. So this is the context, but also is speaking to the hygienic aspects and the healing and recovery aspects of the woman. So how long? Right, 7 days for a boy, 14 days for a girl child, right? So we have Leviticus chapter 12, verse 2 and verse 5. And this period of time, or this is called the Tumat Yoledet. In other words, the impurity or the contamination of the birth process. So that one misunderstands the context here. I know contaminated is a strong word and everything, but ones know that in this sensitive process of birth, right, a lot of things can go wrong if one doesn't take the hygienic aspects into consideration. Here in HaTorah, we have direction instructions for that. Ones might ask, well, how come it's longer for a girl than a boy? Very interesting studies we have read and came across and found out that it actually was put to the test that when women, generally speaking, have girl children, it seems to take more out of them to recover, you know, more or less to their previous birth state, and less time for male children on average. Of course, there may be exceptions to the rules, but this has found out to be more or less of a rule, even by scientific investigation. So this now makes us now look at HaTorah and say, no, it was not sexist. Is that Jah cares about the daughters as much, and maybe in some cases more, right, than the sons. Anyway, second question, what additional time? And one might think I'm caping to the woman. No, I could actually prove it, and you can then reason on that. The second question, what additional time is required for a woman, a Isha, to, quote, recover from the birth? 33 days for a male child, a man child, right? And 66 days for a woman child or a girl child. Leviticus chapter 12, verses 4 to 5. Now, this is called, Hebraically, this is called the blood of her purifying, or the Demei Tahara. Demei Tahara. The blood, or the bloods, right, of purification, the purifying of the blood, the purifying of the blood. Third question, what restrictions were placed on the new mother during her recovery period? What restrictions? So we can put this clean and unclean, especially in this context here, into its proper context. She was forbidden to enter the tabernacle, or the courtyard, which is a tabernacle courts, right? Or to touch the holy things, which usually would have been in the tabernacle courts. Leviticus chapter 12, verse 4. These were the restrictions. So this is the context of the tameh, or the unclean, or the impure sense, Hebraically. The fourth question is, after the, quote, period of her impurity, end quote, or period of her recovery was over, what was required of the new mother, the new Ima, or Inat? She must bring a yearling lamb, a lamb about a year old, for a olah, right? Olah, burnt offering, consumption offering. Some might call it the Holocaust, the offering that was fully burnt. And a pigeon or turtle dove for a chat'at called a sin offering. But the word sin in the Hebrew, in the Amharic, in the Ge'ez, and Afro-Semitic languages, chat'at come from chat'a. Chat'a is like to miss the mark, right? So a pigeon or a turtle dove for a chat'a, so ha-kohen, the priest, can make kapara. Now, kapara is often called atonement in the translation, but literally the kapara is a covering for her. So in another way of looking at this, it's almost like insurance in a sense, covering, but it's called in the translation atonement. Now, if the new mother, the new imma, right, or ima, right, if she cannot afford a lamb, she can offer a bird in its place, a bird, according to Leviticus chapter 12, verses 6 to 8. So here we're studying this this is what we do today, right? We're in the Brit Chadasha, but the pattern, very significant, the pattern, right? Learn to read it according to the sign language, the pattern, right? Pattern recognition. Here, we have the fifth question. How old must a Hebrew or Israelite boy, a Yehudi boy, be when he is circumcised? 8 days old, Leviticus 12:3. Now, let's put a note here. We need to have a discussion on true circumcision, right? The ancient form of circumcision, vis-a-vis this modern-day circumcision, where skin and flesh is cut off, and which sometimes can be, depends on who does what and how it's done. There's this modern way where they cut off the skin, right, instead of splitting the cord, right? But we'll deal with that right there because that's important there, but that's not the subject matter here, right? So what is true circumcision, right? True circumcision. And we can learn about it even from the metaphysical circumcision, the circumcision of the heart. We'll get to that as we move forward, Jah willing. Sixth question, what is tzara'at? Tzara'at, Hebraically, is a spiritual condition that rendered people or things impure or unclean. This is according to the principle here, right? A person so afflicted is called mitzora. Now, in the translations, this tzara'at is called leprosy, right? And the mitzora, which is the next Torah reading and feeding, which is usually part of the double portion, but here in a lunar leap year, it is singular. It is singular here. So we have this week, and then coming forward, the next Shavuot, Jah willing, we have mitzora. Mitzora, which is translated as leper, mo better, when we really study, it will be one who is skin disease. Who is able, question 7, who is able to diagnose? Diagnosis, gnosis, knowledge, science. Dia is 2, like a cross, 2, right? Diagnosis, emphasis on gnosis, because gnosis, Gnostic, in the Greek sense of the New Testament would be knowledge, but it also applies to science. So here we also have some ancient Hebrew science, if we would study it in context. Who was able to diagnose tzara'at? Only a Kohen, only a priest could diagnose and decide whether the condition was present. In other words, to diagnose and also to give a prognosis of the condition. What we're reading here according to translations. 8th question. What are 2 sure signs of tzara'at in a person? Now, let's remember that when you're reading the KJV, it's called leprosy, but that is not quite accurate when we look at the science of it, but it is just a point of reference. So, 8th question, what are 2 sure signs of tzara'at, skin disease, in that sense, in a person? If the plague, and it's interesting, the plague is called a nega, almost like nega, like we say, instead of saying niger, we say nega. Well, that's similar to how the Hebrew word for plague is. Interesting. If the plague, if the nega appeared deeper than the skin of the flesh, and if there were white hairs in the plague, according to Leviticus 13:3. So what were 2 sure signs of tzara'at? If the nega, the plague, appeared deeper than the skin of the flesh. And secondarily, if there were white hairs in the plague. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 3. Ninth question. What happened to a person that was diagnosed with Tzara'at? What happened? He, or in those cases she, but he was forced to live in a state of exile, to tear his clothes like a mourner, and to shroud his face, descending to the upper lip, and to remain alone. If anyone came near to this one, he was required to warn them by crying out, "Unclean, unclean, stay away." Question 10. According to the Rebbanim, the scholars of Torah, the Memharan, called rabbis, according to the scholars of Torah, Tzara'at was caused primarily by evil speech. Again, according to some of the ancient teachings, Tzara'at, what is called leprosy or skin disease, was caused primarily by evil speech, because the evil word sound power, evil speech. And this evil speech in the Hebrew is called lashon. Lashon means the tongue, literally. Lashon, ha. Ha is a definite article, the, and ra. So it's called lashon hara. Lashon hara. Sound like lashon hara, like horror of the tongue. Lashon hara. Lashon hara. Why did they come to this particular conclusion that Tzara'at was caused primarily by lashon hara, by the evil tongue or the horror of the tongue, by evil speech, lashon hara? How did they come to this? Because of Miriam. Because of Miriam, the achot, the sister, the hit of Aharon, of Aaron and Moshe. Because Miriam was afflicted with Tzara'at right after she spoke ra, after she spoke ra, after she spoke all that ra about Moshe and Moshe's Ethiopian, his Cushite, his Ethiopian wife, his Ethiopian Isha. According to Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 12, verses 1 to 10. So this is an interesting reasoning point right here, that according to the ancient scholars of the Torah and the Scripture, they saw that Tzara'at, which is called leprosy or skin disease, was primarily caused by evil speech, evil word, sound, and power called lashon hara, or in this sense, lashon hara, horrible tongue. And they came to this conclusion because of Miriam, how Miriam, the sister of Moshe and Aharon, of Aaron, one of the three that Jehovah says he sent, the Trinity sent three to bring his people out through the prophet, and he mentions Moshe and Aaron and Miriam. But she, at this present time, because of what she spoke, the rah-rah that she spoke concerning Moshe and concerning Moshe's Ethiopians, his Cushite, right? Cushite in the Hebrew, Cushitic, Isha, she got that. 11th question. Who was the first to speak or spoke? Who was the first to spoke? Who first spoke lashon hara? Who first spoke lashon hara? Who first had the lashon hara, right? The horrible tongue. It was the Nachash. It was Ha-Nachash. It was the Nachash. It was the serpent. Nachash in the Hebrew, we have in the Royal Amharic the Ibab, the Nachash or the Ibab. We like to say the Ibab of Babylon, Bab, right? Here we have the Nachash in the orchard or the garden or the Gan or the Genet, Gana, in the Gan, the orchard, who had tempted the Isha, right? This is before she was called Hawa, who had tempted Eve by slandering Yahweh Elohim. I mean, the slander was so great, right, that it begins off from how the Nachash asked the question. The Nachash asked the question saying, hath Elohim said? Not even referring to his name, right, as we have in the previous chapter, when you're reading chapter 3 and we see the whole temptation thing and the tree and everything like that, when the Nachash, the serpent, said, hath Elohim said? A good response to that is Elohim who? Because he didn't say Yahweh Elohim. He didn't say Jehovah Elohim. So that Lashon Hara, is like, it started from as soon as he began to speak, but even more on that. So he is the first one who spoke with the evil tongue or the tongue of evil, right? And we say evil, it doesn't mean the spooky thing people call evil. That which is hurtful, that which is ill, that which is unkind, that which is bad, right? You say that which is off, right? The 12th question here, just for these 12 questions for Key Tazri'a. Can you list, right? Can you and I list some cases of Sara'at, what is called leprosy, in the Bible, that's mentioned in the Bible? Well, we have Miriam, right, firstly. We have Naaman, right, and Gehazi. We have Gehazi in 2 Kings chapter 5, right? We have King Naaman and Gehazi, 2 Kings chapter 5. Miriam, we have Miriam in Numbers chapter 12, verses 1 to 10. We have King Uzziah in 2 Chronicles chapter 26. We have the Mitzorah, the leper, that was healed by Ha'adon, Yeshua, right, by the master, the boss, Yeshua, right, in Matthew chapter 8, verse 2. And we have 10, right, lepers, right, healed by Adonenu Robenu Yeshua in Luke chapter 17, verses 12 to 19. Now here, Chabarim, we got like 48 minutes here for the first 2 hours that's podcasted on the Blog Talk live stream. Also, hopefully the live stream is working well on Rastafari Jews as well as Rastafari students, and also, if possible, I think on the Facebook, Ethiopian World. Yes, Ethiopian World Net. Just a couple of reasoning points right here that we can pick up on more. Right, those are the questions there, the basic questions, 12 basic questions. I know ones might want to zoom in on certain areas, so seeking to create the ways and means so that we can go into a little more, as His Majesty says, you all are familiar with the 10 Commandments, right? You may elaborate on them so we can elaborate, right? Come, make we reason. As a Ras, the head, Taman, the head to be faithful. Ras Taman. Taman means faithful and trust in the Amharic. So Ras Taman, we can say that. Though Rasta doesn't have a direct, it's breaking down the name inadvertently. Just say Rastafari, just Ras Taman, or Ras. Yes, Tafari. Here we have discussion topics, some reasoning topics. Just touch on one or two of them, just to get some of the basics. Blood. Let's touch on blood. This whole thing about blood, right? Blood. Blood is regarded as, quote, holy, end quote, because it is the carrier, the, quote, carrier, end quote, of life. As it says, and it reads, the life of the flesh is in the blood. The life of the flesh is in the blood. Now, blood in the Hebrew is enunciated as dam, almost like dam, like we say dam, right? Dam, right? In the Amharic as dem. So we say dem in the Amharic for blood. In the Hebrew, dam. All right? It's like different dialects, East Coast, West Coast, North, South. But blood outside of the body, when blood is outside of the body, it is symbolic of death, therefore bloodshed. All right? Another way in the Hebrew scriptures and the translation, especially like into the Amharic, it brings out almost the same sense. Like when it says bloody men, it's almost to say menstruating men. Right, menstruating men, bloody men are considered menstruating. The woman is a part of the cycle so set. But the men who are blood-thirsty men, that's different. That's rah-rah, right? But blood, when the blood is outside of the body, this is a word pick, a symbol, an allegory, in a sense, to say of death. So when blood is in the body, that life. When it's outside the body, death. Sacrificed blood is applied to the altar to make atonement, according to Leviticus chapter 17, verse 11. I hear some folks I don't know if they're trying to be funny. That's just how they be. They say, oh, is there blood sacrifices? Is there blood sacrifices in the Bible? For you Hebrews, there blood sacrifices? No, there's not blood sacrifices. What are you talking about? There's sacrifices and there's blood. It's not blood sacrifices, right? Sacrifice blood, right? From the sacrifice, the blood is applied, right, to the altar to make atonement, right? And then the remainder is poured at the bottom of the altar, right? It's not imbibed. It's not like the other nations that did other things. Not for the Hebrews and the children of Israel in covenant. So here we get Yah regulating a lot of the traditional and historical and customary practices that the children of Israel were used to, even in Mitzrayim, in Kemet, in Egypt, and in other places. He's regulating it because of what occurred with the molten calf. They had come into covenant. And so soon after they had come into covenant, while Moshe was up in the mountain, they got bummy. And they went to Aharon, Aaron, and his whole calf thing. They kind of went back, like the dog returning to his vomit, and the pig, after she's washed, she want to wallow in the mud. The dog, he returned to his vomit. The pig, she returned to wallowing in the mud. I said the he and the she, so you recognize that's how the parable comes out in the Hebrew. But here, just to continue here, because it is connected, the blood is connected with life and death. So the blood is both connected with life and death, the duality of blood. Various Hebraic, we could say, taboos or restrictions are associated with it. Blood cannot be consumed. Blood is a potential source of ritual impurity, especially when blood is outside of the body, or if there's any bleeding that just continues to bleed and bleed and bleed. Anybody that keeps bleeding, you know that eventually they're going to put pressure on the womb. Now, woman, the Hebrew woman, order became ritually impure because of its presence, and so on. So did men at war. We could not enter into the camp, much less enter into the holy place, right? And in other cases of other issues. We're going to touch on issues. Issue actually means some liquid that proceeds from some place, right? The second reasoning topic, that's the first one right here. Let's discuss more on this, about blood. What's our reasonings about blood? All right. Secondarily here, as a second reasoning, the Torah, it makes clear, the direction instruction makes clear that the realm of the holy, right, or the Kadash, in fact, we have to kind of backtrack from the previous notes. We didn't have enough time, right, in the after the Sabbath and the first day Sunday service to get into all of the details on the root word, the Hebrew word for holy. But here, just to bring this out, the realm of the holy must be separate from the realm of the unclean. As Leviticus 10:10 wins, 10:10, Leviticus 10:10, it says, you are to distinguish between the holy and the common, and between the unclean and the clean. You are to distinguish, to discern, and even to discriminate in that sense, to have discrimination, discernment. But how are we to make sense of the realm of uncleanness and cleanness, or in the Hebrew, the realm of Tuma and the realm of Tahora? How are we to make sense of this? In particular, the various Torot is directions, instructions, in Ha-Torah, in the direction, instruction. The various Torot concerning, for example, there's a Torah of childbirth, right? There's a Torah, say, of menstruation. There's a Torah of Sara'at, of skin disease. So the various Torot in Ha-Torah concerning childbirth, for example, concerning emissions. Emissions are called, Zav, or Zav, emissions. For example, this is a question I have. If somebody has like a real bad running nose, a priest, could he serve since he has an issue coming from his nose? Could he serve? According to the Torah, he could not. So I said, wow. I said, so this is not sexist. This is hygienic. So emissions from a woman, emissions from a man. Nidut, right? Nidut, which is strictly more concerning the woman. That's called menstruation, or in the translation, her flowers. sara'at, called leprosy or skin disease. These nowadays, right, they seem they seem in the world today, in the world flesh and the seclorum today, they seem to be irrelevant in our lives and liberty, by and large. I say we, just in the world, not of the world, right? And yet, quote, in 2 Timothy, Rabbi Saul, Rav Shaul, the apostle to the Gentiles, Apostle Paulos, he says to his disciple, his Talmud, Timotheos, in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16, he says, all scripture is inspired by Elohim, the power, the source, and profitable and beneficial and profitable for teaching. Yes, Rastafari. So here, just to pause right here to some of the subject matter here in this Torah reading and feeding. Not saying that we're going to cover it all this time, but at least for the brothers and sisters, give us opportunity to discuss the Torah reading and feeding and to grow in grace and in the knowledge of the King of Kings Christ. Yes, I, Rastafari. Yes, right there, the 12 basic questions for Tazria, and went into a few of the reasoning points. Make reason. I'm going to pick up a little more of that right there, but one of the themes on the blood, remember what in them hard is dem man dem. In the Hebrew is dam, but right here, as Pesach's coming forward right here, pass up.
Them coming like a blood direction. The spirit of God never live up a standard in a them section. Them think we start, but them have the wrong perception. The blood that we protection. Anytime you see the blood, step on this one. On every man you want a business, but a straight and go long and no fit. Pass over. I did yo, Jammer. Hanai is appointed, so don't be disappointed. It's another rhythm culture production.
This time we play, plain and song again. Low bad mind make a damn a them. No care what them say or do, them can't get rid of you. This type of DJ, just again, man.
Jammer. Hanai is appointed, so don't be disappointed. It's another rhythm culture production.
You're rocking with the Cypher DJ.
Them coming like a flood in all direction. The spirit of God never live up a standard in a them section. Them think we start, but them have the wrong perception. The blood that we protection. Anytime you see the blood, step on this your one. On every man you want a business, just up straight and go long and no fit. Pass over. Anytime when you see the blood, pass over. On the see me covered by the blood. If step on this your one, on every man you want a business, just up straight and go long and no fit. Pass over. Anytime when you see the blood, pass over. Straight over my shoulder. Don't touch not the last one. I did time to fit that recover down to the blood of the one and younger Jew. We got to feed them scheme and all of them blood. Them now go mountain not a lot. None of them weapon me farm against the saints. I got them a got shot. What them a do, what them a try. Them often know when they're ready to die. Because we not skip the one of them fly. Them just like a bird out of the sky. I, man on a rock, my younger circle pack. That's the kid when they come, we go save the lost life on the cross. Anytime you see the blood, step on this your one. On every man you want a business, just up straight and go long and no fit. Pass over. Anytime when you see the blood, pass over. On the see me covered just identify. Busy as them in the sky. But we don't know him, dead and alive. Alright, when they don't know me Hebrew, me back with the blood so me reading through. So let Satan fool you. Come to the Lord and his love will ease you. So let the music move you. Some to put a copy and through. Let the music groove you. Jump for joy, let me see you run through. Me don't see it, babe. The Lord rose from the grave. That the reason I is a key for you and I. That the last soon come. And the spirit poured out. These are the closing days. And the Holy Ghost fire soon blaze. Let me see the eyes them high. Raise them high. Lift up high. Raise them high. We are in of Jesus most high. We are in of Jesus most high. Christian just identify. Christian just identify.
Here we have today's daily song. We have song.
Psalm 53.
מזמור נ"ג למנצח על מחלת משכיל לדוד.
The fool hath said in his heart,
אמר נבל בליבו,
there is no God.
אין אלוהים.
Corrupt are they, and have done abominable iniquity. There is none that doeth good. God looked down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there were any that did understand, that did seek God. Every one of them is gone back. They are altogether become filthy. There is none that doeth good. No, not one. No, not one. No, not one.
אין גם אחד.
Have the workers of iniquity no knowledge, who eat up my people as they eat bread? They have not called upon God. There were they in great fear, where no fear was. For God hath scattered the bones of him that encampeth against thee. Thou hast put them to shame, because God hath despised them. Oh, that the salvation of Israel will come out of Zion. When God bringeth back the captivity of his people, Jacob shall rejoice, and Israel shall be glad. Be glad, be glad, be glad, be glad.
מזמור נ"ג למנצח על מחלת משכיל לדוד. אמר נבל בליבו אין אלוהים. השחיתו והתעיבו עוול, אין עושה טוב. אלוהים משמיים השקיף על בני אדם, לראות היש משכיל דורש את אלוהים. כולו סג יחדיו נאלחו, אין עושה טוב, אין גם אחד. הלא ידעו פועלי אבן, אוכלי עמי אכלו לחם, אלוהים לא קראו. שם פחדו פחד, לא היה פחד, כי אלוהים ביזר עצמות חונך, הבישותה, כי אלוהים מאסם. מי ייתן מציון ישועות ישראל, ושוב אלוהים שבות עמו, יגל יעקב, ישמח ישראל.
Stay tuned for today's lesson on the true good news of His Imperial Majesty's Christ, the Messiah, Yahushua, as proclaimed and taught by our brother, Wyndham Yadon, a.k.a. Ras Iadonis Tafari, of the Lion of Judah Society.
Yes. Another way to say Elohim in the Hebrew connotes the creator name, the powers in singularity, he, the powers, he, as well as the Yahweh, hey, Yahweh, the Hashem, is to the mercy or the covenant, the covenantal side. So one of the little nuances, like some songs might be more like Elohim focus, and he's calling it Elohim, so we know it's a judgment, creation and judgment song. Now the verses that were quoted from HaTorah, what's interesting there is that in the Torah when it says the Elohim is in the same sense as Psalm 82, where it's after you are gods, it's speaking to the judges, the Shoftim of Yisrael are referred to as the Elohim. And in that particular psalm, corrupt judges, the judges of Yisrael, are being arraigned because they have his name upon them by not carrying out his will in the earth. That's what that psalm is. So when many folks be like, yeah, you see, it says Elohim, like we all are God. No, stop that. It's speaking specifically in the context of HaTorah and the scripture, because it is I Torah and I scripture. But here, looking at the time on the board, also one of the nuances there in Psalm 56, you'll notice how Dawid, when it says that David HaMelech, is a man after Jehovah's own heart. And even in the New Covenant and New Testament, and even in what's called the Christian sense, how Dawid and the Psalms of David, like it provides like a foreshadowing, right, of what is called the Brit Chadasha. In other words, how we move from, the phi cycle, in other words, to the meta phi cycle. We see it through the Psalms, and we hear it, and we study it in the Psalms of David. Even in the Psalms, we speak about different offerings. Notice how he's communicating in the pattern, as Jehovah said to Moshe, see that you do all things according to the pattern. And it's obvious that that word there was a principle for Dawid. So he's referring to the pattern, even with the thank offering, or what's called in the Hebrew the Todah. Some might say Tawada, right? The Todah offering, right? The thanksgiving, giving thanks and praise. Yes, sir. So here, as we ride up in the third hour, just a reminder to those who may be listening in the Blog Talk live stream, coming up on the top of the hour, the live stream here in this region, it's the 3 a.m. Iowa, is going to go off. So be sure to check out, if the eye is up and willing, the eye can check out the replay on the Blog Talk, or check out the YouTube, the streaming at Rastafari Jews and also Rastafari Student. So here, yes, I like to share this tune on Thanksgiving in Amharic. The word miskana, right, equals the Hebrew Todah. So it's interesting right here that we have thanks. The same word for thanks also is the thank offering. So people say thank you, and it's like sometimes empty. But with he who be who he be, the thanksgiving is giving thanks, but it's also that offering, the offering. So here, yes, the Miskana session. And while listening, it's like Ras Anvesa and Army Gideon, the inspiration off of Psalm, 92, the sabbatical psalm, the Shabbat praises, Shabbat Shalom, Senvet Salam, in the Hebrew and in the Royal Amharic. Just was thinking about the Miskana and Todah, thanks and praises, some relics right there. Kenai LOJ Society commissioned some of the singers and players, artists out there, as well as some sound systems, so some sabbatical tunes, some inspirations. Yes, I. Link, yes, I. LOJS.org, hit the contact. Would like to commission, for some sabbatical music based on some of the inspirations here. Give thanks to Sister Bridget with the Miskana session, Ras Muata, and Army Gideon, Ras Anbesa, Chavarim, Shalanu, yes, I, Rastafari. So here.
God was pure and choosing. I was called, and I was choosing. It's funny, but it's true.
you are here to record this picture of me in my palace garden at Addis Ababa. People who see this throughout the world will realize that even in the 20th century, with faith, Christ, and a just cause, David will still beat Goliath.
Yes, yes, yes. And here I and I, the children of the King, here in the 21st century, faith, courage, a just cause. I and I will still continue to beat down. I beat down this the Gentile, the end times of the Gentiles, and this world system, and the King of Kings highway. Yes, as we are that oncoming generation. He says he will be succeeded by the oncoming generation, the called, chosen, and faithful Rastafari. Yes, praise be the majesty of Hashem Yeshua HaMoshiach. So here, let's ride up. We're going to ride up. Hopefully we have the full of the grace period right here in this podcast here for this first day service, because there's a couple of reasoning topics and subjects right here, going from Hebrew for Christians right here, and also have some additions, right? Some additions or tweaking certain things, but giving thanks to John J. Parsons for his contribution. Also the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. One can download a PDF copy, but of course, invest in a hard copy, for the posterity and the family. Yes, to build a righteous library. So here, going to pick up again and pick up on the reasoning. We touched on some of the reasoning subject matters right here, to put things in a little better context. Like when people say leprosy, and if you study leprosy today, it doesn't quite match the signs and the symptoms. In fact, I think it's like vitiligo has some aspect, right, even more so than conventional Hansen's, what's called Hansen's disease. But note this, that it's about one level of it is about health. It focuses on health, even the levity, the dietary, what's called a dietary, keeping it Levitical. And even though most of Lionized Rastafari, right, either don't eat no deaders or at most righteously will make scant use of what's called animal flesh, it's important for us to understand the pattern here, just as it pertains to the Brit Chadasha, as it pertains to the Adis Kidan. So some basics right here. Let's begin off with some of the reasoning, some of the subject matters we can hopefully maybe have, reasoning with ones and ones, question and answer, and go into a little fuller flow. But this is an overview, right? This is a Torah portion, like the overview here, the TPO. So here's the reasoning. Topic 1 is blood. Blood. Now, blood in the Hebrew, blood, right? It's called dam, right? So an interesting, funny meme out there. I think it was either what's the other brother named Chris? Forgets his last name, but it was I think Ice Cube, right? Ice T, Ice Cube. No, it was Ice Cube, right? And basically there had some Hebrew on there, had the two, the dalet and the meme sofit, right? The final meme, basically dam, D-M, right? The two Hebrew letters, but the vocalization is the dam, right? So dam, like we say, damn, dam. Interesting. And
90 seconds.
Okay, we got 90 seconds, y'all. So tune in. And in the Royal Amharic, the word blood is dem, almost like the Rastaman and certain ones among the Benjamites and others will say like dem, or say dem men dem. It's just an interesting little nuance and note, linguistically speaking. But blood, dam in the Hebrew, or dem in the Royal Amharic, is regarded as, you say, kedus, right? Or it's regarded as holy, right? It's regarded as set apart. There's a good note in the Schofield Study Bible where I will find the section. I think it's in Exodus. We'll find it, but the note basically says that if holy was consistently translated, in some places in the Bible, KJV version, holy, it'll translate as holy, then it'll translate as sanctified. It doesn't really bring out the real sense. The real sense is, or hallow, that word hallow, Hallow, like hallow be thy name, right? What does that mean? Basically, set apart. The root sense translated into the English would be set apart, right? Set apart. So blood, dam, right? Dam is regarded as holy. It's regarded as set apart. Why? Lama. Why is blood right? Lemon didn't know. Why is it set apart? Because the blood, the dam, is the carrier of life. The blood is the carrier of life. The life of the flesh is the blood. Now we know this from the fragment of the book or the fragment of the scrolls of Noah, that Moshe Rabbeinu, right, put within, we could say, his first book, or Bereshith in Genesis, that the life of the flesh is the blood thereof. Now it's interesting to study blood and even plasma. You've heard about plasma, right? Interesting that plasma, as in getting into the book of the priesthood and touching on sacrifices and transmutation and the science, right? The science, the Hebrew science right here, plasma is the fourth stage of matter: solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. And then plasma is also one of the active ingredients found in the blood. And then also plasma is used in technology to give what? A clearer picture? Interesting. So the blood, the blood is the life of the flesh. And blood, or dam, outside of the body is symbolic. Learning to read the sign language is symbolic of death. And therefore the terminology of bloodshed, or bringing out the Hebrew and the Royal Amharic, like, bloodthirsty men. You might hear I and I bring out an English translation of menstruating men. Because when you read the language through the Holy Spirit, you pick up that's the sense of it. That's how the force of it will be brought out in English. So if a woman in her normal times is considered that way, well, what about the menstruating men, right? So bloodshed, blood outside the body, symbolic of mot, right? Mot, right? Mot, essentially mot, mota, muta, right? Mot, right, is death. Mawet, mavet, mot is death. Interestingly enough, that the Canaanites, some of the Canaanites in the land, one of the Elohim Acharim, right, the gods, which are no gods, but one of the other gods, the other Elohim, right, because it's obvious that even the Canaanites knew of the landlord because they were in his land. Right, so basically what we get with the Israelites coming in is an eviction notice. And what some people say, oh, woo, look, the Canaanites, they had Elohim, look at the statues, El. Well, for anybody who studies Torah observantly, it's like, damn, that is the reason why. Jah says basically he's evicting them, right, and he says to I and I, don't do as they do, but of an interesting note, that they had a particular so-called deity that they worship, that is the operative word in the Hebrew for death, mot or mut, right? Sacrificial, right, blood, or sacrifice blood. Now, some people try to be funny and say, hey, you Hebrews, you're Israelite, you all believe in blood sacrifices. No, you're confusing us with the Elohim Acharim, right? Our power says there's no Elohim before him. So if we know what he says right here, we know that there's no blood sacrifices in that sense. But there's the blood, right, of the sacrifice. So the sacrifice blood is applied to the altar, right? The altar, the mizbeach, the place of sacrifice, to make kapara. Kapara properly is like almost like a covering. Now, we don't have the time here to get into it, but you ever heard of the term? It's kind of a racist term among the Gentiles, right? In times of Gentiles, like kafir. You say kafir, boy, kafir. But that word kafir in the Hebrew, kafar, right? It means to cover, but it actually links back with a word picture to that black, tar, that pitch. Remember Noah's Ark? He was told to cover it over on the outside and the inside, and even with that basket that Jochebed, Moshe's Emo, his mother, she covered the outside of the basket with the kafar, right? And that means to cover, right? So kapara is an atonement in the sense of covering. So as we look at the linguistics in the language, it's almost as insurance in that sense, right? Is applied to the mizbeach to make kapara in Leviticus chapter 17, verse 11. Now, because it is connected with life and death, so blood is connected scripturally according to the science, the Hebrew science, with both life, right, chai, life, and with Mawet, with Mavet, with Mot, with death. There are various taboos, especially Hebraically, that are associated with it, with dam, with blood. Blood cannot be consumed, cannot be eaten or ingested. Of course, when we look at the way of the Moshiach, right, according to what one's called the New Testament, there are some interesting questions that need to be asked. This is why when Yeshua said, right, to those in John's Gospel, chapter 6, verse 66, those disciples, there were disciples that after he said what he said in John chapter 6, at verse 666, they walked no more with him because they said that what he said, what Robbeinu, Einai Rabbi, the Rabbi of rabbis, Yeshua HaMoshiach said to them, they couldn't take it. It was a difficult saying. He spoke about, drinking his blood and eating his flesh. But then in the same reasoning, we could say the same she'or Hebraically is like when a rabbi gives a sermon, right? In the same sermon that he basically gives, right, he says that flesh, the flesh profiteth nothing, right? So he's telling us that he's not speaking in a literal sense. As Hebrew, the two truths of the Hebrew is that there is the literal and there's the figurative. So no, the Bible is not just a book of allegories. Yes, it's a book that has allegories and proverbs and parables and mishal and mashlim. Yes, but it's not just a book of parables. So there's the two truths. Some things is physical and some things is metaphysical. But get this, before you can get to the metaphysical, you got to have the groundation, the 5 cycle. This is why we say from low degrees to high degrees. So blood cannot literally, actually, right, be consumed, right, in Torah observance. Blood is a potential, right, source of ritual impurity, just in the context of HaTorah, impurity otherwise as well, right? But blood is a potential source of Hebraic ritual impurity. Now, woman, they became tameh or impure because of its presence, for example, right? But then there's a whole host, right, of other applications for even men. For example, the soldiers, right, going forth to war, right, and coming back from war. We could not enter the camp but for at least 7 days, proving the point of, quote, menstruating men, right? There's times that we, in a sense, there's no pun here, but, have to, in a sense, as men, menstruate, in other words, where we are called, right, to draw the sword. But now we can't enter back into the camp, much less march into the holy place, right, even after a victorious issue of war, but we have to purify for 7 days, right? So let's reason on the whole thing of dam, right? Say dam. Stop cursing. No, it's no curse. Dam, right? It's actually life. Blood is the life. Second reasoning topic right here, is that HaTorah, the Torah, it makes it clear, we can say crystal clear, that the realm of the holy, the set apart, must be separate. In fact, once again, the operative meaning of holy, that the same word is one word in the Hebrew from one root, but we have it in some places, being translated in the KJV version as sanctified. Even a confusion comes in where they have it as consecrated, right, or consecrate, because the consecration of Aharon, right, of Aharon and his sons, the first Christ and the first Christians or Messiah and anointed ones in the camp, right, within that first, within that first sense right there, right, the anointing. Hold on for a moment, just juggling right here. Yes, So right here it makes it crystal clear, right? It says concerning, consecrate. The consecration is the filling of the hand. So the operative word in the Hebrew for the consecration that Aaron and his sons had to abide for 7 days was a filling. The operative sense, mileh, right? The filling, right? The filling of the hands, right? The filling of the yadayim, the filling of their hands, right? In order to prepare them and initiate them in their function. So the word holy, right, is a important term, but just take note that in many places in the Bible, they might translate sanctify, and sanctify is pointing to the same root word. If they were more consistent, it will be easier to understand the pattern. right, and the mechanics and the knowledge and the benefit, right, of the Hebrew direction instruction called Torah. So the Torah makes it crystal clear, right, that the realm of the holy, the set apart, must be separate from the realm of the unclean, or what may be called the common. In Leviticus 10:10 wins, 10:10, it says you are to distinguish, to discern, in a sense, righteously, to discriminate. You are to discern between the holy, the set apart, and the common, the not set apart, between the unclean and the clean. But here's a question. How are we to make sense of the realm of what's called uncleanness, tuma, right, and ahora? So there's two words, tuma and ahora. Tuma, right, means uncleanness, and ahora, right, means cleanness, or quality and lack of quality. I point that out because the Amharic term rikash could be like if somebody get a sale on something, or it's cheap, has a sense of cheap. So between the valuable, right, and the no value, in other words. In particular, the various Torot, direction instructions concerning, for example, here with Ki Tazriya, childbirth, concerning the Zav, well, it's called Zav, right, or Zub in a sense, Zav is emissions, or what is translated as issue, right? So it brings a new sense of it when somebody says, you got an issue. I said, I hope not. You know what I mean? But emissions, right? Nidut, menstruation. Sara'at, right? Skin disease, affliction. This seems nowadays to be irrelevant in our lives and liberty. Direction instructions concerning childbirth and emissions, nocturnal or otherwise, nidut, right, menstruation or bleeding, sara'at, skin affliction, they seem to be irrelevant in this modern day way, our lives and liberty. And yet, 2 Timothy 3:16, Rabbi Shaul, a.k.a. Hawari Apolos, the apostle to the Gentiles, Paul, he says, all scripture is inspired by Elohim and is profitable for teaching. What can we learn from this pattern here? Thirdly, third reasoning subject. So the first on blood, the next on discerning and distinguishing the separation between the set apart and the common, the not set apart, between the clean and the unclean. Thirdly, the sages of Torah, Rebbanim and others, Memharan, they have stated that the Ab, the word for father, Ab, the father of all uncleanness, is contact with Mot, or Mawet, like that drink out there, Moet, yeah, it's basically a Hebrew way, Afro-Semitically, to say death. So the father of all uncleanness is contact with death in the sense of contact with a corpse. Since that immediately results, right, according to the instructions, the Torot in Ha-Torah, direction instruction in the Torah, contact with a corpse immediately results in a separation from the sanctuary, according to Bamidbar, known as Numbers chapter 19, verse 13. Now, just consider the previous Torah reading and feeding of what happened to Nadav and Abihu, the two brothers who presumptuously went in to burn the Ishans, right, the Ishans offering, right, and how they were consumed, right, spontaneous combustion, they were consumed, and how Scripture says that they were completely burned, but their garment was not burned. And their two other brothers, there was a question saying, well, why was it the cousins that took out the bodies of Nadab and Abihu and not Ithamar, right, and Eleazar? Well, because that would have rendered them unclean during this first day of the tabernacle. So that point and principle there for I is Rastafari. Many of I that look at Numbers chapter 6, we can and hopefully see the application. Even though that contact sometimes was necessary, even for a priest, as we get to learn as we move forward, we get to find that in certain cases, the priest, was allowed to, in a sense, become defiled for a short period of time for, his mother and his father, right? His Isha, his wife, and, well, his Isha of his home. If he's separated, that's different. That's somebody else's responsibility. But for his woman, his wife, for his mother and father especially, right? And also for, his children, especially depends on what ages they are, or if he has a daughter that is not married, in other words. So that points out right there, and there's a process of purifying, basically. And the same principle of like the 7 days. It's important how the 7 days come in as a time period. The cycles, right? Learning about the cycles of life. But, question. Why is death regarded as inherently unclean and defiling? This is one of the reasoning subject matters. Why is death, right? And death in the sense of the corpse. Even though many families, before they had the institution of undertakers, just to explain Numbers chapter 6 a little bit better, like a Nazarene, man or woman, may have a vow of a Nazarene, right? So if their mother or father, a close one to them that they're responsible for according to direction, the Torah, right? They may have to, like a man have a Nazarite vow, and he has to now bury his mother or father, right? Because it'll be a greater dishonor to dishonor, as the 10 words says, honor thy father and thy mother. And in Leviticus to the priest it says, fear thy mother and thy father. So there's a responsibility right there. So what does that mean? Well, that means that his vow, the separation, right? He's no longer separate because now he has to deal with something that is his responsibility, right? So the locks and so forth, so the rites and ritual according to Numbers. But the reason why is because he would have to prepare the body, right? He would have to prepare the body. They didn't have the institution of undertakers, right, amongst the Hebrews in that sense. It was I family, like many other nations, that basic, primitive, simple people. The Egyptians now, well, they made it a whole institution, par excellence, just like we have it today. So nowadays, it doesn't mean that, well, like one didn't go to the funeral or something like that, or pay respects like that, or go to the wake and say to the family, oh, I'm sorry about so-and-so, for your loss, I commiserate. No, it didn't mean that. It means that one would literally, right, would have to, behold their loved one, the body, the corpse, wash and prepare it. Saw a little film the other day where some Muslims in Pakistani or whatnot in England, they had like a mosque, and in their mosque they had in the back where they did this for, where this is what they do. And I said, Chan, we have to really find a way to get around the whole undertaker business. You know what I'm saying? Like, the other Jews do, where they can claim that body, habeas corpus it, like Joseph of Arimathea did for the Robenu Yeshua's body, because these are important things, can kind of preserve organ theft and stuff, other kind of crazy stuff going on. But that's the reason why, right? Because one would literally, that's why in the New Testament you find that it was Maria Magdalene and the other woman. I guess by maybe some custom, maybe the woman, more traditionally dealt with things like that, but we see where the women are going forward, right, to the tomb, right, to perform that rite on Robenu, on Einai Rabbi, on Yeshua, right, and this is what that was about, right. The man, them, you see, they wasn't there, but if it was, it's just like a mother, father, sometimes, that would happen. So it's not one's fault. In fact, one is doing, something that is very honorable in that sense. But that's the reason why. They didn't have undertakers. You couldn't pay somebody else to do it. You would have to prepare, clean, wash, anoint, wrap, Lefafa Tzedek, Lefafa, that's a book there, but that's like the wrapping, the embalming, and the wrapping of the body and all of that, But that's one reason why right there. So on this same subject matter right here, the contact with death in the sense of a corpse. Then also besides all of that, depends on what a person, especially some strange corpse, like, what did the person die by? It could be some contagious disease as well. That's a next level of it. But here, on this third reasoning subject matter for this key Tazriya, unlike right? Unlike other religions or faiths, majority, most of them, that reverence the dead, right? For example, in many of the Mitzrayim cults, so forth and so on, cults of the dead, it doesn't matter whether it's whoever's dead, can be reverenced, can be made their own personal god or something like that. The Greek cults, right? So it's the latter day, right? The Grakoi, the Greek cults, they had their cults of the netherworld. The Mitzrayim, the Kemetic, they had the Duat. Now, yes, there is some reference Hebraically to the Sheol, which was their narrative of this place of after one's past. Yeshua Rabbeinu speaks about it in the parable concerning the rich man, right? Concerning the rich man and Eleazar, should I say, and Lazarus, right? But unlike other religions, faiths that have a reverence for the dead, Elohim wants I and I to be life-focused. Point of reasoning. Let's reason on it, because some might make a counter-argument. Be interesting to hear that reasoning. Take note, brothers and sisters, so hopefully we have the time for it. Unlike religions or faiths or so-called spiritualities that engage in ancestor worship, Hai Lahim seeks for I and I to respect I and I heritage, but understand it, overstand it with an eye to a present and future ad infinitum, right, focus, an eye to the future good. Now, a point about ancestor worship, just to be made mention right here, right, there are ancestors. I was going to do a vlog, a vid on it, right? Is there Hebrew ancestor worship? Just a kind of point of reasoning, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? Yes, but the focus is not on just Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but it's to the power of the triunity, the power of the Hebrew Trinity, for example. Now, other, religions and unlike occult practices of what some might call spiritism and what some call sorcery, Ha Elohim, Ha Elohim, Elohe Yisrael, seeks for I and I to be in a personal relationship with him. In other words, to take these instructions personally. Little point of reasonment to supplement to this point is that when we read HaTorah, whether in the Masoretic Hebrew or in the King of Kings Bible, we find that there are areas where he is speaking, like when he's speaking to all of Israel as one man. Now, from the perspective linguistically, that means that when all of us hear this, right, it's speaking to all of us as one corporate body, right? One corporate body, we say one corporation, but then to each individual member, right, to each individual member. So in even that sense, right, there is a relationship. What is our relationship? When he says that thee, take that when you're reading, he says thee in HaTorah, take that as to me. Though it is a common occurrence, next point right here, fourth subpoint on this topic here, unlike common, though it is a common occurrence, some say that death is a stopping place, quote unquote, for life, and therefore needs to be invested with special sanctity, right, the set apartness, and also with certain taboos and rules. Now, look the time right here, Chan. Like to share this with ones and ones to show his Hebraic majesty as who's the elder Rabbi Wentworth, Arthur Matthew, right? The commandment keepers, as he mentioned, he said that Haile Selassie is how do you say, covertly Hebrew, and how he keeps the kashrut, the kosher, liberty in the palace in Addis Ababa, and also our businesses, right? During the visible reign of His Majesty, will close early, on the Friday evening, in preparation of the Shabbat day. We know that, the faithful Ethiopians keep the Shabbat. I'm looking for the autobiography book right here to show you what he had instructed the church, right, as Rastafari, concerning the mourning and weeping, right, the mourning and weeping for the dead, right, how he sought to instruct them to constrain, right? That and his language, right? Hold on for a moment. Let's just give me one moment, quick moment here, brothers and sisters. Okay, so here we have the autobiography, because when you study the Torah, and you start to read certain things, like for example, Hiwatena Ethiopia Rimja, my life and Ethiopia's progress, the autobiography of His Majesty, book 1, right? In book 1, some of the things become very curious, like when he was speaking to the regional ministers, right, who collect certain taxes and everything, and he was telling them about how much don't exploit the people, right? And then in that one he said about, to keep the Sabbath day, and in fact he said that, in future, you're going to be punished, for not keeping the Sabbath day. And then he furthermore says in that one Awaj proclamation, he says about the 3 annual feasts. Now, of course, HaTorah says that 3 times in the year, right? So even that link there. So we have the Sabbath, we have circumcision, we have clean, unclean foods. You know what I mean? We have the 3 annual feast festival. This also is testimony to Holy Ethiopia's Judeo-Christian roots. But here we're looking for the word sound where he is advising. Just looking through this right here. Give me one moment. He's actually advising the clergy. And then when we took note that actually this is even before coronation, right? So think about Revelation chapter 12, that man-child. He's actually advising them even on religious and churchical. Here's chapter, Chan. It's chapter 27 for this 27 sabbatical study for this Shabbat Strong. So here, book 1 of the autobiography of Gormawi Negus Neges, His Imperial Majesty, chapter 27 is called About Our Arrangements for the Appointment of Bishops Chosen from Among the Savants of Ethiopia, right? And this is actually the chapter before, chapter 28, that says about our coronation as emperor. So this was done even before, right? According to what we have here, before he was emperor, we have this as Rastafari, as Negus Teferi, as King Teferi. So it's here that he says this. This is sheer, this since we're speaking about, blood, life, death, direction, instruction. This chapter right here. It is chapter 27, and it's the 4th item right here. It says, His Majesty writes here, Gormawi Negus Neges, the King Messiah, Christ in his kingly character. It says, in earlier times, the Messiah in his kingly character, right? In earlier times when a person died, his family, in arranging the Tezkar, interesting Tezkar memorial from Zakar in the Gu'ez. The Tezkar, the memorial service, would prepare tella, beer, tej, honey mead, or like honey wine, and other intoxicating matter, and would invite the priests, right, the kahinat, the priests, to the bait, to the house of the deceased. They would offer them food and drink beyond measure, and would make them exceed what has been ordained. But now, since we have become convinced that conduct of this kind does not conform to the new era, or the Adis Zemen, the new age of civilization, of the kingdom, of the government, and is also, get this, is also forbidden by the Holy Scriptures, we have arranged that the Tezkar, the memorial service for the deceased, should cease consisting of intoxicating drink and excessive amounts of food, and that instead the relatives of the deceased should have the absolution prayers, like in the Hebrew, the Kaddish right, perform and give according to their means some money to the priest, Kohanim, the Kahanat, for the performance of the absolution, almost like Judaically the performance of the Kaddish. It should not, however, be forbidden to offer food and drink to the poor, provided this is done in moderation. We have urged the bishops and the priors to preach in this sense, intending to be a model and example to the people. When our daughter, Princess Zenebe Work, died, we distributed gifts of money for the absolution rites, the Ethiopic, the Kaddish, among various churches and monasteries. Many people began to do likewise. So that's the fourth point here in chapter 27. In chapter, okay, here we're in chapter 26, because he goes on there. So actually, chapter 27, he's giving them instruction as Ras, as Nigus, Teferi before coronation. And here, Slika, we're in chapter 26, about our planning and initiating gradual improvements and reforms in the work of the clergy. About our planning and initiating gradual improvements and reforms in the work of the clergy. All right, so it's interesting, like David, King David had a strong influence on the order of the priests, setting the orders of the priests and the Levites, and his psalms becoming the central part of the tabernacle and the temple worship, right? And also, this is His Majesty here, before he's even coronated, that prince, right, is changing things for the better and improving things even among and instructing even the bishops and the churches based on the scripture. So that was the fourth point there about the memorial for one's family members, the person who dies in the family, what the family should do, and how the bishops and the priors and some of the church, the priests had exceeded their limits and were now instructed concerning moderation. The fifth point here, right, this is page 166 of the autobiography, is since early times, it was the custom in some provinces for some of the relatives of a deceased person to manifest mourning by cutting their hair. His Majesty, right? His Majesty speaking on this subject matter right here. He says right here, fifth item, since early times, ancient things that people used to do. It's like when we say that Leviticus was put here because the firstborn sons of Israel had shown themselves unworthy because they went after the Egel Maeseka, the molten calf, falsely called the golden calf, right? And therefore it was given to those who, when Moses said, who is on Jehovah's side, is on the Levites. It was given to them, right? The order of priesthood, right? So here, in a like way, there were early customs. Some of those things may have been good in their time, but now they needed to be regulated. And here, Rastafari, before coronation, Kanamawi Haile Selassie is sorting it. He's sorting out, right? When he says, he who had the key of great King David, right? Since early times, it was the custom in some provinces for some of the relatives of a deceased person to manifest mourning by cutting their hair, beating their breast beating, and by general wailing. But now, when you read this chapter, he shows like what had been going on, and then he says, but now, ahunim, right? But now we have given instructions to the savants, the learned ones, to go round the various churches and to preach that the family of the deceased should, apart from wearing a black patch on the edge of the dress as a sign of mourning, cease and desist, cease the cutting of hair. Rastafari, cease the cutting of hair, the beating of breast beating, and wearing special mourning clothes. It's a shame because some of this is, once again, has crept in among some, Orthodox worshipers. Some ones and ones have family ones, even whether mother or father, right? There's a particular time of mourning. Some say 30. I think the Fita Neges has similar to what the Torah, between the 30 to 40 or so days, right? And move forward, right? Because then you're getting into other spirits, not the spirit of your loved one, right? So as Matthew says right here, hence, as the savants, right, as the learned ones preached with diligence, the hopeless mourning for a dead person has gradually eased. So for I as Rastafari, this is further proof, of who he be. But it's interesting that His Majesty says, yes, okay, when one's passed, there's certain proper things to be done. But this overly, this getting all caught up, in death. It's about life and the liberty. He says the hopeless mourning for a dead person has gradually ceased. It's a shame that some of this is creeping back in, right, among the apostasy, the careless Ethiopians, and even in the amongst the church today. But let's take note of that, because here in the 21st century, it's for I and I to give these instructions, right, as we are that oncoming generation, right, the generation then that seek the face of the power of Yaakov, of Jacob. So here, on the laws, the Torot of Tuma, right, were intended of like uncleanness. The laws of uncleanness, they were intended to regard death as an anomaly. Let me repeat that. And if you really understand the Hebrew perspective of Scripture from old to new, death is actually an anomaly, a systemic anomaly. Like in the Matrix, a systemic anomaly. Right? That's what death is. Death is a systemic anomaly, right? An aberration, and even an obscenity. I'm recalling to mind what Gurmawi Ngusa Neges, as Matthew said to the wife of the President Kennedy, the mother, I think it was the mother, because, both of them, I think, losing their children. It says something to the effect of, it's a crime against nature. It's a crime against the nature, and truly it is. Death is an anomaly, a systemic anomaly, an aberration, and even an obscenity. Death, mavet, is the, quote, ultimate profanity. People say, stop cursing, profane, don't be profane. Death is, right? Let's put it another way, right? The Torot, the direction, instruction in Ha-Torah, and the pattern, right, against contact with the dead, they were intended to instill a sanctity, a set apartness, a sanctity, and a reverence for life and for the liberty of His divine majesty. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hashem, the Holy One, blessed be He, blessed be the name. But Mavet, Mot, death, is the opposite. It's the opposite end of the continuum of life. The sanctuary, for example, the Mikdash, the Mekdes, and therefore, by essence, for what the sanctuary stands for, the divine presence, the divine face, right, which was, in that sense, symbolically to be found in the presence of the Ark of the Covenant, symbolic for the throne of the King Messiah, right, is set apart. The sanctuary is set apart. When we say the sanctuary, we're zooming in. We have the outer court where the sacrifices took place on the north side, but we're looking at that tent, right? That tent, we could say Jah House in the middle of I Street, is set apart as a place of life, as a place of healing, as a place of shalom, right? Shalom. Death, however, itself is regarded as an enemy, right? From the old to new, death, in essence, is an enemy. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 55. Rabbi Shaul, our brother and apostle to the Christianoi and to the Nazarene, right, wrote this here, and it's based on his Pharisaical Judaic, the roots. It's just that he needed proper orientation, right? Even there is the phrase in Yeshaya, Isaiah 25 and 8, where it says that he quotes and he shares with those in the Brit Chadasha in 1 Corinthians chapter 15:55. Death is swallowed up in victory. Wow. Overstand the metaphysics of that. Death is swallowed up in victory. Right? Bila hamawet la netzach. As we bring out where it says to the chief musician, to the overcomer, lam natzayach. And menatzayach is the word for the chief musician, the chief of the chanters, right, within the holy place. But the root of it is natzach, and netzach, which you find Kabbalistically on the tree of life, is victory, So here, bila, swallow up, hamawet, the death, la netzach, of victory. In other words, death, right, is swallowed up, right, in victory, right, in overcoming. So it's interesting that in the New Testament, we look at the better New Testament Hebrew, right, in Revelation when it says about he who overcomes. It uses the same term that we have in the superscription of the Davidic Psalm, menatzayach, the one who achieves netzach, victory, or directly overcoming. Don't be overcome. Such is I great hope, I great expectation, eternal life and liberty, the freeness from the presence of chatiyat, missing the mark, pain, sorrow, and best and blessed of all, enjoying the panim, the face, right, the presence, the perception, the perspective of Hailahim, of the power of the true good, the true God, as Aina eternal love, right? True love, Jah love is true love for Iva and Iva to an indefinite period of time, to the worlds without end. So let's discuss, let's reason on this right here. Meditate and take some notes, Chabarim. How do you think Hailahim seeks I to regard 5-cycle death? I think I gave you an indication. Right, the King Messiah, right? How is Hailahim, right, wants us to regard, how does he want us to regard physical 5-cycle death? Especially in the light, the illumination, right, of the resurrection, right, and the tikva, the hope of Robeno, Ainai rabbis, Ha'adon, Yeshua. Here, brothers and sisters, looking at the time. Let's see if we can, let's see. Let's go on. So that's one subject matter there. Now, to the main one, the key tazriya. Why does childbirth make a woman unclean or even ritually unclean? Moreover, why does HaTorah require a chet or chatiyat offering, right, the chatat to be given after the period of her impurity? Is this meant to atone somehow for what once called the original sin of Eve? I don't call it the original sin of both of them was ignorance. The problem with the woman, according to Torah, she was in transgression. The man was in obedience. The woman was in transgression. Her speaking to the serpent, the man being there saying nothing, caused her to transgress. The man, basically being the one told not to eat of it, after his woman eat of it, he eats of it, right? So people call the original sin this and that, but really the original sin was ignorance, ignoring that they was told not to mess with it, right? But is this meant to atone for what Eve had done, so to speak, right? In Genesis chapter 3, verse 16. Some questions to reason on. Even King Dawid HaMelech, Negus Dawid, he said in Psalm 51:5, I was born in iniquity, with sin, or in some versions, in sin, right, did my mother conceive me, or with sin, my mother conceived me. What does Dawid mean, Chabarim, right, in his repentance prayer there, seeing that he gives us prayer after, the adultery and the murder incident concerning Bathsheba and concerning Uriah. In Psalm 51:5, he says, I was born with iniquity. With sin, my mother conceived me. Some interesting points to meditate, idetate, head rest on, and come, make with reason. Is the chatat, the sin offering, meant to remind I of some inherited khatat or sin nature that is present even at the moment of birth, or is it meant to atone, to cover for the mother's inherent guilt, the asham, the guilt that derives perhaps from her relationship with Hawa? Reasoning points, questions and answers. These don't have definite answers. It's about discussing this and reasoning. Even Maryam, even Mary, this Maryam, right? The emo of Yeshua, Robeno, Adoneno, even she offered the prescribed sacrifices after the birth of Robeno Yeshua, our Rabbi Yeshua, in Luke chapter 2, verse 22 to 24. So come, make a reason. Next topic, subject of discussion, right? Why is the period of impurity twice as long when a woman bears a nekeba, a girl child, rather than a zakar, a male child? Moreover, is the mother in a state of uncleanness when her son is circumcised? Does the man-child's circumcision on the 8th day somehow reduce the amount of time of the mother's tuma, her uncleanness? Another point also about circumcision from what is done today, the cutting off or the cutting of the cord, modern circumcision or ancient circumcision. Put that as a little footnote there. The 6th topic of reasonment, if we can share this one right here, right, and pick up on impurity, or what's called tuma, right? Impurity is not just about just a hygienic level, although this overall can be seen as, the hygienic prescription, seeing what the role of the Levites also were in the Torah, right, in the 9 areas of people activity. So we also get health. But the impurity here is not just about hygiene as much as it is about meeting the, quote, spiritual conditions, the iritical conditions, the preconditions for participation in the Hebrew and the holy rites and rituals of the sanctuary. This is what it's about right here. The impurity of the Tumah is not so much as about hygiene, right, in that sense, as it's about meeting the spiritual terms and conditions for participation in the rites and the rituals, which brings out an interesting sense of some of the Psalms, because some of the Psalms seem like either David is on the run from Saul, or for some reason he's not able, or the psalmist is not able to attend, right? So it's like almost symbolically they are attending, but they're not able. So the impurity for man or woman is not just about hygiene in that kind of common sense, but in the holy sense, to the part sense, is about meeting the spiritual conditions for participation in the rites, the Hebrew rites, and the ritual. For instance, since blood, the dam, is regarded as holy, set apart, its presence must be carefully managed and regulated at the sanctuary. And therefore, women in a state of nida, right, menstruation, were excused. Actually, they were excused from participating at the Mizbeach during that time. Nonetheless, there is some ambiguity, some may say, surrounding the case of a person afflicted with Sara'at. In physical 5-cycle terms, Ha-Mitzora, the person afflicted with the disease, was quarantined from the camp, perhaps to minimize the risk of infecting others and contagion. But in spiritual terms, Ha-Mitzora, the afflicted one, or, quote, leper, end quote, was regarded to be in a protracted state of impurity that made him or her unfit for fellowship within the community, within the covenant community. Unlike other entirely natural causes that rendered someone impure for a time, however, the sages associated Ha-Mitzora, the skin disease, with the phrase one who brings forth evil, or the sense of the motzi ra'a, one who brings forth ra'a, ra, or that rara, evil, hurt, right, ill, unkind. And they thereby concluded that evil speech, or the lashon hara'a, the tongue of evil, lashon hara, was the principal cause of the dis-ease itself. Lashon hara, the lashon hara, the horrible tongue, lashon hara, the tongue of the evil, is traditionally defined as saying something bad, right, evil, unkind about another person. Some even say, even if it happens to be true. In other words, evil speech, lashon hara, involves spreading rara, ra'a, even if it's true, spreading evil reports, or expressing a, quote, negative or critical spirit, or hypercritical about others. Adonai Yeshua, our master, our boss Yeshua, Robeinu, told I and I, the Talmudim, that, quote, out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks, in Matthew's Gospel 12:34, and further warned I and I about the unthinking use of our words. You think? In Matthew chapter 12, verse 36 to 37, also Matthew chapter 5, verse 37, we have these word sounds from Robeinu, I and I, Rabbi, the Rabbi of Rabbi, Yeshua HaMoshiach. But I say to y'all that every idle word that men and people shall speak, they shall account for in the day of judgment. For by your words, your debarim, you shall be justified, righteous. And by your words, debarim, y'all shall be condemned. Proverbs, the Mishlei Shlomo, the Proverbs, the Mashal of Solomon, the allegories, the Proverbs, the parables of Solomon, 18:21 brings out that life and death, or actually death and life in the order of the words, death and life are in the power of the tongue, or from the Hebrew and Afro-Semitically speaking, death and life are in the hand. Look at that Hebrew hieroglyph right there. Are in the hand of the tongue. Death and life are in the hand. Both in the Hebrew, it says yad in the Hebrew, it says ij, right, in the Amharic hand, and it says id, right, in the Ge'ez, right? Death and life are in the hand of the tongue. So what's in your hand? Since words, the barim, are the result of our thinking, let's reason on and headrest on how negative or rah-rah thinking, right, evil thinking, bad mind, as one said, bad mind worse than obia. And obia is also a Hebrew term, but anyway, bad mind is worse than obia. How bad mind, right, can create sickness and soris, affliction, right, in your own life or in I and I liberty. Here, get a couple of minutes to 7. Let's see if we could go for 7 right here. 7 topics of reasonment for this 27th sabbatical study. In the Brit Chadasha, right, in the new renewed covenant, the Hebrew bringing out a sense of renewed covenant, right, we read how Robeinu Yeshua, how he healed various lepers, quote unquote, and even touched them. Matthew 8, verse 2 to 3, Mark 1, verse 40 to 41. The healing by Robeinu, Adonenu, Einai Rabbi, Einai Bosh, Yeshua, is paradoxical, since anyone who touches someone afflicted with sara'at became, at least ritually, right, unclean themselves. And yet we know that Robeinu Yeshua was entirely without chatiyat, or impurity. He alone is the healer, right, of our uncleanness before Lifnei Elohim, before Elohim. And that's according to the faith of the King of Kings Christ, yes? And through his touch we are made acceptable for true spiritual worship. So we thank Yahuwah, Yahweh, Elohei Yisrael, Ha'adon Yeshua. He visits and heals I, check this, outside of the camp. Outside of the camp. And it is the prerogative of Jehovah, the Elohim of Yisrael, to touch those afflicted with Sara'at and to heal them based on their teshubah, based on their metanoia, based on their thinking differently or doing a 180, right? And in like measure, Adonai Yeshua, he entered the leper colony, right, of humanity to heal those who cried out to him. Let's reason. Come, make a reason on that as well right there for a new covenant perspective of that. Now, the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, talking about those 10 men, the 10 lepers. Let's see how we're doing on the time right here. Metaphysically speaking, look at the metaphysics of the lepers. Right, saying that how Mitzorah, the skin disease, or the lepers, the next 28th coming forward, connected with the 27th. There were 10 men, literally a minyan, 10 men, right, that were lepers in Luke chapter 17, verse 12 to 19. These typify, according to the type, learn to read the sign language, the impure relation of life activities in one who has, by his erroneous thoughts, thinking about life, separated his life, his liberty, his living expressions from the one, Ahadu Amlak, Yahuwah Echad, Adonai Echad, from the one source of life and liberty. Leprosy, Tzara'at, here it symbolizes substance, so separated from the great central life source that it has lost its vitality. So we have the 10 lepers and they're standing afar off. The life in man and humanity finds expression through the avenues of the senses, starting with the 5 foolish senses, our natural senses. Unless the senses are redeemed and uplifted, there is a tendency to utilize the pure life and liberty of Hailahim, of the power in sense pleasure, and get caught by the Satan of the senses. A leprous or impure condition in the organism, affected or a spiritually afflicted condition is a result. Even though one might say, and we could say that white people in part based on the principle of Torah come from such a condition, but think about those black people who are spiritual lepers. Now the Kohanim, the priests, in verse 14, they stand for the connecting link between the carnal man, the fleshy man, the mortal man, and Hailahim and Elohim. That point in consciousness where man exalts his thoughts and he makes union. He exalting his thoughts, lifting up his thoughts to the higher height, to heaven, making aliyah, going up, right? And makes union to wahido, oneness, with the healing power of Ha-Elohim, Hailahim. Everything must resolve and resolves itself back to the one. Everything must resolve itself back to the one, to the Echad, to the Ahad, Ahadu, as its starting point. All the avenues of expression in man and humanity are unified, made one with Hailahim, with Exia, the sustained, the good, the generous Ab. When one consciously lives a liberty in harmony, in oneness, right, in observance, Torah observance, compliance with the divine law, Ha-Torah. As His Majesty said, for my part I glory with the glory of His Majesty. Thanksgiving, Todah. Thanksgiving follow in natural sequence, and thus we have verse 15, Chabarim. So here for a fullness. I did mention Eleni, right? Gonna play that. Then we played Pretty Face, to see his face, right? His perception, his perspective. Give us a teaching of His Majesty. Here, brothers and sisters, here, shall bless the eye, keep the eye, cause its faces, and grace to shine on the eye, and give eye, Yeshua, Shalom, victorious salvation, overcoming Shalom. Yes, I, in our hearts and in our homes. Yes, I, and for our loved ones too. Yes, Shalom, Chaverim. Shalom. Here, Eleni on the outro right here. Blessed ones. Be blessed and highly favored.
That's what you thought you don't do. It's love star music. Horror 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 music.
Yes. Shabbat Tov. A good strong 7 days to come by Shem Yeshua. Baruch Hashem. Here, Eleni.
That's what you thought you don't do. It's love star music. Horror.
We are the blessed ones. We are the blessed ones. We are. Young blood red. We are the blessed ones. That's our protection. Yeah, we know that Jaja watch over we, so we're not afraid to know we're not worried. We are the blessed ones from the ashes like a phoenix. Yeah, up some scratches like a remix. Yeah, cut to scar, that's how we heal. 'Cause who we are and how we feel, it's not a movie, it's for real. This, yeah, but the blessing them a follow we. Yeah, our God we serve without apology. Yeah. So we reap, so we sow, so we learn, so we grow. No weapon they throw shall damage we believe. We are the blessed ones. That's our protection. Yeah, we know that Jaja watch over we, so we're not afraid to know we're not worried. We are the blessed ones, soaring like the eagle. Yeah, higher and higher we go. Yeah, we're full of ambition. We know we're far from perfection, but still we trust the Father plan. Yeah, ever on top, never below. Yeah, ever island, never borrow. Yeah, we believe in the promises we claim them even now, every today and every tomorrow. We are the blessed ones. That's our protection. Yeah, we know that Jaja watch over we, so we're not afraid to know we're not worried. We are the blessed ones. Declare a thing and it will be a thing. Just say a thing and you will see a thing. With every word you know you're creating. And so I sing. Declare a thing and it will be a thing. Just say a thing and you will see a thing. With every word we're creating. We are the blessed ones. That's our protection. Yeah, we know that Jaja watch over we, so we're not afraid to know we're not worried. We are the blessed ones.
Yahuwah Eloheinu, and Elohim. Watch over the eye and I. Shabbat Tov. A good strong 7. Hashem Yeshua. Be well, be blessed, and highly favored. Shalom, Chaverim. Shalom. Love y'all.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio.